Hello, and welcome to Plateau TV, which airs episodes roughly as often as Sherlock does on the BBC. It's been a while, but Jay and I were talking, and it seemed like we should get together for the holidays, catch up,
Hmm.
and do another one of these things. Jay, how
Yeah,
are you
yeah.
doing,
I'm good, man. I know I've been bugging you to do an episode for quite a while now.
man? You have, and I said it last time. I'll say it again. It's like Jay is always game. This is entirely me. We've got I think I had mentioned at one point or another. My wife, again, I can't remember the last one we did, but my wife was pregnant. Now she's not because
Mhm.
we have a
Right.
baby boy, and that's
That's part of the reason why we haven't done this. So,
yeah, that eats up time, and then just travel with work and various other things. It's just life stuff. But
and
I do like
congratulations
doing
also.
them. I definitely enjoy it, and that's why I still do the Sausage Factory because I really
Mhm.
enjoy talking with you, Jay, and with the other guys. Yeah, I figured some downtime, have some vacation. This is a good one to do. And I was
Cool.
thinking too, for today's episode, if we have any topic, I'm not sure that we have it. It's not codified exactly, but we'll talk about our favorite Christmas episodes of TV shows we like, or maybe even ones that maybe we don't like. But um, that's it. But before we dive into that stuff, Jay, what have you been watching lately? How's it been going?
Well, I mean, like honestly, over the past week or so, I've been watching lots of the UFC, the Ultimate Fighter.
Yeah,
I don't know if you're a fan of mixed martial arts at all, but
heard of it, and again, I watch it sometimes. Like, isn't the guy? I'm pretty sure Jason David Frank, who was the Green Ranger from Power Rangers, isn't he? Does he do that, or does he do UFC?
I mean, I don't think I've seen him on any of this stuff, but I know he is a big martial arts guy,
Yeah,
like real martial arts. But no, that's like one of the only like real reality TV things I watch, like outside of House Hunters or something. But
yeah,
it I kind of got out of the loop the past few years, so I've been catching up on all that stuff.
right.
I got the UFC app or whatever, so I've been watching lots of that stuff.
Nice. Seen any movies lately?
And the last movie I saw was Wreck It Ralph Breaks the Internet. So that
How was it? I heard good things
or,
about it. I've seen clips.
well, I'll say last movie I saw in the theater. That is,
Oh, okay.
but it
Yeah, any movie applies, I suppose.
I I wasn't that impressed to tell you the truth.
Okay.
And really, I mean, I really haven't heard a lot of talk about it. Considering Pixar, big, usually it's a big deal. But I
It's
wouldn't
true.
say
It
it was that
came
good.
out and then it kind of died. That's
Hmm.
true. That's
Hmm.
accurate. Um, Again, I've seen some clips online like of the big like Disney sequence or whatever, but otherwise, I it came out. It seemed like people sort of liked it, and then it went away. It's interesting. Okay.
The Disney sequence, and then there's a sequence with all the princesses. I think is probably the best part of the whole movie.
Yeah,
But I mean, it's not bad. It's just kind of it's really nothing special at all. So
those are it's funny. I haven't seen too many movies. I did see, and again, if there's any fans of the Sausage Factory watching, I saw Halloween way
mhm.
back in October, which I very much liked. I didn't realize how varied opinions would be on that, but I liked it. I thought it was pretty good. And then I saw Creed 2 back in November, and to look at me, maybe you wouldn't think that I'm a big Rocky fan, not judging by my workout or lack of a workout regimen, but I really do. I'm actually a big fan of the Rocky series. I don't know what it is, just something about it. Maybe because Rocky's always an underdog, and
Mhm.
I'm a short, sort of unremarkable guy. Sort of physically. It's something that resonates with me, but I very much liked Creed when it came out back in I think that was 2014.
Mhm.
Um, Again, just very very good movie. I mean, it was so good it moved me to write a blog review about it. Which,
Mhm.
again, if there's anybody around here who follows my blog, you know how infrequently I write in my blog about as frequently as I do Plateau TV. um, but that movie I thought it was outstanding, like just very very
Mhm.
good. And obviously the director, Ryan Coogler, went on to direct Black Panther. I think he's got some other things in the works too, but just outstanding movie. So Creed 2, unfortunately, I mean, I liked it. It was good. It wasn't a bad movie by any stretch, but it didn't strike me the same way that the original movie did. And given the storyline, which again, all the trailers and things, I'm not spoiling anything. Basically, Ivan Drago, the guy who killed Apollo Creed, so Adonis Creed's father in the movie, he's got a son, and he comes back, and he wants to box Adonis Creed, and the story sort of takes off from there. And it was fine, it was good. I don't know. It was just kind of average. And I think because Creed was so good and I have such affection for the Rocky movies, I was just a little disappointed by how unremarkable I found it. Maybe I need to watch it again. Maybe I just wasn't in the right mood or something. Who can say? But I wasn't into it as much as I wanted to be.
It's strange you say that because I've heard nothing but glowing reviews for that film. Really. So I wasn't that. I mean, I liked Creed, but I wasn't crazy about Creed. Obviously, I didn't like it as much as you did, but I thought it was great. I really like Michael B. Jordan.
Yes.
A lot.
I mean, it's one of those things where he is giving like 120%. It's a lot. Honestly, do you know what it kind of reminds me of? It's sort of apples and oranges, but do you remember years back they did a remake, reboot, or reimagining or whatever of Red Dawn starring Chris Hemsworth, and the movie kept getting shelved. Like, he filmed it, I think, before he did Thor, and then for whatever reason the studio kept like holding it, and then Thor came out and it was like, oh, Chris Hemsworth, and then the studio all of a sudden was like, oh, hey, let's put this out there now. I sort of felt it watching that movie that Chris Hemsworth was like giving 150%. Like, he was acting his ass off, like trying to give weight to what he did. He was really in the action sequences, doing all this stuff. And it seemed like all the other actors were kind of like, chill out, dude. It's like a Red Dawn reboot. Like, I don't know why you're trying so hard. And it kind of shows. Like, he's doing awesome, and the other people are just kind of sleepwalking through scenes. And like I said, it's apples and oranges. That's not how I would describe Creed 2, because Stallone is awesome as Rocky, as he always is. And there's some other great actors in the movie too. But I guess Jordan just seems to rise above them all. And maybe I'm biased because he's from The Wire, he's from Friday Night Lights, he's from Black Panther, he's from all kinds of things that I really like. So whenever I see him, I probably just sort of root for him as inside. I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't realize he was on Friday Night Lights. It's one I still haven't seen, but it's on the list.
Oh,
next to many things.
Friday Night Lights is we gotta. I know we talked about we got to do our Lost rewatch at some point, which obviously we need to do this more regularly if we're ever going to get to that. But Friday Night Lights should be on that list too, just because outstanding show. And Michael B. Jordan, he doesn't even appear. He's in the final 2 seasons. What that show did was something I quite liked, which is, it's about a high school football team. So naturally, there's transition built into the show as the characters move on to different things in their lives. So he's not even in the first 3 seasons, but he becomes, one of the characters in seasons 4 and 5, and just, again, outstanding. He was a good actor ever since The Wire. I've seen him in other things even since then, and he's just really good. If I'm trying to be positive about Creed, the one thing that I would say is that Dolph Lundgren, who of course plays Ivan Drago, he gives a great performance as Ivan. Like, they actually took some time, it seemed to me, to try and make Ivan Drago a character this time. I'm on the record. I don't know whether I've said this in the Sausage Factory or elsewhere, but I'll say it again here. I like Rocky IV. I get jazzed up watching Rocky IV. It's a perfectly fine movie. But when I think about like the other Rocky movies and just movies in general, I don't think Rocky IV is that great. Like, it's basically a music video. I mean, like, watch that movie, and almost half of its running time is montage, which hey, it's Rocky, man. He's climbing
Yeah.
mountains. He's chopping trees down. Like, that's cool. I can get with that. Like, it makes me want to go run a mile or something
Yeah.
after I watch it. I get it. But it's just, I don't think it's that great of a movie. And like Ivan Drago is a plot point. He's just a giant monster Russian guy who's there to kill Apollo Creed and be this seemingly undefeatable, opponent for Rocky. And even that movie tries to sort of squeeze a little bit of character out of him, like in that final fight with Rocky, where he kind of realizes, Rocky 2 is sort of a seemingly undefeatable foe. But this movie, again, Creed, if I'm trying to find something positive to say about it, they actually give Ivan Drago an interesting story. And Dolph Lundgren, it like there's like the barest sense of it in the script. And Dolph Lundgren sort of acts it entirely with like his expressions and his physicality and kind of even just like glances and the way he interrelates with his son. So I actually was really impressed by that. But just again, the movie generally, I probably need to see it again, but I was just a little disappointed as a big Rocky fan as I am.
Dolph is in it. I didn't
Oh
realize.
yeah. So
okay,
Dolph
cool.
Lundgren is in, because I mean he even he has some good scenes with Rocky where he like shows up at Rocky's restaurant and they have kind of like a very tense sort of like across the table meeting. And he sort of does in this movie what he did in Rocky 4, which is he's sort of looming dangerously, in scenes, which, Dolph Lundgren can do that.
Yeah.
And actually, if I can tie this to a TV show, Dolph Lundgren played a villain on Arrow a season or two ago. And I was just very mad because it seemed to me like there were numerous chances for that character, like when he's fighting Green Arrow, to say, "I must break you." They didn't. Maybe they thought it was low hanging fruit, but like I couldn't have helped myself. You got to get him to say it.
Well, maybe they were thinking like people wouldn't get the reference. I don't know.
I mean, it's Dolph Lundgren. Like he's known. I know he's done other things, but he's done one thing that he's known for. Like he's Ivan Drago.
Yeah, right.
I mean, yeah, sure. He was in like, wasn't he in one of the original versions of The Punisher? Wasn't he one of those guys?
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was
the Punisher. He's been in some other. I don't know. You might be right, but this movie, so the TV show Arrow on the CW was restrained, whereas this movie, he says that line like 5 times in various contexts. He's like, "I'm going to break your boy," or I think he even says like in the final fight where he's like talking to his son, he says something like "break him," and it's like, and I'm sure he says it a few other times too. And I remember like I grabbed my wife, I was like, "Oh yeah, he said it." So again, I sound like I'm being down on the movie, and I don't mean to be. I enjoyed the experience of going there. It was just sort of after I left. After I left the theater from watching Creed, I felt like, man, like, hey, I want to go run a mile. I want to go tell people how awesome this movie is. The music was great. I mean, that was the other thing. The music was really unremarkable.
Oh wow.
Creed had a really great soundtrack, and the composer, who by the way was the same composer as for the show Community.
Oh wow.
Göransson. It's like Ludwig Göransson, I think is the gentleman's name. He did an awesome job of keying off of the old Rocky themes in Creed, as well as giving Adonis Creed his own theme song, which I thought was a really good kind of contemporary riff on the Rocky theme. But again, it's an entirely new piece of music. In this movie, the music's barely there. I mean, I don't know. Like I said, I don't. This is not. I didn't want to talk about Creed 2 the whole time necessarily, but you got me going. I
was going to say I could circle this
fun.
back around to TV.
Sure.
I saw the ESPN 30 for 30 on Tommy Morrison.
Oh yeah.
From Rocky 5, which
that's right.
I know you probably hate Rocky 5. A lot of people do. It has a special place in my heart. But
I don't. I actually like Rocky 5.
Okay.
It's like because I for whatever I like Rocky 5 sometimes more than I like Rocky 4, or at least. Sorry, let me. That's not true. I think Rocky 5 feels like more of a Rocky movie than Rocky 4. I think that's an accurate statement.
Well, I think
But
Rocky Five was the first Rocky film that I actually physically like, or not physically, but I was engaged in it, and I
yeah,
understood the plots and everything. So it was kind of the first one that I really paid attention to and
yeah,
liked. I saw it at a friend's house, like when it first came out on VHS. But anyway, I saw the 30 for 30 on Tommy Morrison. You know, the
yeah.
Tommy the Machine Gun in Part Five, and man, that's just a heart wrenching documentary. If you ever, do you know what happened to the guy?
I
He,
thought he got and this is I just pulling off the top of my head. What I think I know is I thought he got like HIV or AIDS or something, and I don't know. Did he die? Is he still
yeah,
around? I'm not
yeah,
sure.
he
Okay.
died.
Yeah.
It's terrible, terrible stuff happened to that guy. And I mean, he was a really good boxer too. Like he could have done it all, but he got HIV and they wouldn't let him fight. You know, this was way back when, I don't know if you remember all the Magic Johnson stuff when he got
Oh yeah.
diagnosed, and
Yeah.
you know, like people were still so unsure of AIDS and HIV and exactly
Yeah.
what it was and how it was transmitted that they were afraid to be around people that had it. So
Yeah.
no one would box him. He lost his license to box, and that was pretty much it. That was the end of his career, and got into drugs and other stuff. So
Oh wow.
yeah.
It's funny because even Stallone kind of rags on Rocky Five a little bit, but that sort of started his love affair with getting actual boxers in the movies.
Mm-hmm.
Because Tommy Morrison was actually a boxer, and like you say, a
Mm-hmm.
good one. He got I can't remember his name now, but the guy he fights in Rocky Balboa was an actual boxer.
Yeah.
I do believe the gentleman from Creed, who again, that villain was so sort of just a guy, like unremarkable. I can't remember his name, but I think he too similarly was an actual boxer. And then similarly, I believe the guy from Creed 2, also an actual
Oh,
boxer
really?
and a big train of a man, like huge. Um, but anyway, yeah, Tommy Morrison. It almost seemed to me like Stallone was doing there what he ultimately wanted to do, or like that he was sort of doing what he wanted to do, which is he wanted actual boxers, like actual boxing.
Mm.
Because he sort of was going for the realism of like actually getting hits in.
Yeah. Yeah. You can only like pretend to get hit so many times before you can tell it's not real.
Yeah, I mean again they're clearly not like going full strength
Right.
necessarily, but there's actually a it's in the movie. It's in Rocky Balboa. That dude tags him. And it's a scene where like Rocky's in the corner, and like the way the scene's written, he's supposed to just kind of he falls down. He's supposed to just get up, but he really dinged him. And so, again, it's in the movie. It's that scene where like Rocky's in the corner and he's like trying to get up, but he can't. He's like grabbing on the ropes and he's like struggling to pull himself up. That's because again, sort of step behind the camera for a second. He like knocked him silly. So Stallone was
Yeah.
actually struggling to get up, and they keep it in the movie. I think it's an effective scene. But yeah, he likes that, and I think it makes for a good movie. And Rocky Five, Rocky Five, I think always gets picked on too because it's not, Rocky's not actually in the ring fighting. He has like a street fight. Um, it's funny we're talking about this because and my apologies if I brought this up before, but I just stumbled upon recently a different cut of the Rocky Five fight. Have you ever seen that? It's like on YouTube. I think if you just like look up Rocky Five, it's one of the videos that just pops up. Maybe I'd never looked
Wow.
for it.
Wow. Check that out. No, I don't
And
believe I've seen it.
it's kind of an alternate ending. Like the fight takes some of the same, like, so in basically in the version that we've both seen, Rocky is kind of fairly, he kind of goes after Tommy Gunn. Like once Tommy like decks Paulie, Rocky's, remember, he has that's one of my favorite Rocky lines, as a matter of fact. It's like, hey, you knock him down, why don't you come knocking me
Yeah.
down?
Yeah.
Like, he growls at him. And then he brings him out in the street, and then Rocky pretty much just starts fighting him. In this version, there's more dialogue and there's like a different flow to the fight. Like, I actually felt like this alternate version I'm talking about is truer to the character of Rocky and truer to the movie we just watched leading up to this point. Because the whole time Rocky's like, Tommy, we don't need to do this. he's like, listen, man, like this is not what we want to do. Like we don't have to do this. We don't have this. You don't need to prove anything to anybody. And like Tommy, like to be honest, it makes Tommy, I think, a more compelling and just better villain because Rocky is like basically still being himself. Like he doesn't want to fight this kid, no matter what, no matter how the kid forgot about him or, was sort of leaving him behind. Rocky is still Rocky. Whereas in this version, it's kind of like Street Fighter Rocky, which I don't. Again, like we're saying, I actually like Rocky 5. I don't mind that Rocky kind of gets pissed off and wants to like deck the kid, but again, it's an interesting thing. Check it out on YouTube when you can.
Cool.
The quality isn't great, so just prepare yourself for that. But it's interesting. I also think there's an alternate version, a sort of less inspiring version of Burgess Meredith. Do you remember how Burgess Meredith is kind of like, keeps appearing to him in his mind? In the version we've seen, it's very inspiring. It's like, hey kid, get up. I didn't hear no bell. Get up because Mickey loves you. In this version,
that's a good impression, by the way.
You just gotta rasp your voice, really. In this version, like, and it's just as interesting because I think it's probably truer to the character of Mickey. Mickey goes, kick the shit out of him, which I just thought was kind of it's a different take. So I think I can perhaps understand why they went with the version they did. Maybe they think it was a little too hard edge or something. I don't know, but if you like Rocky 5, then maybe you'll find that interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, I also just saw Mary Poppins Returns in theaters. Actually, that's fresh on my mind. Just saw that the other day. And I just, again, I'm going to try and I'll say as little about it as possible because I'm hardly qualified to be a reviewer of a movie like that. I took my wife. That was the reason that I went. Which isn't to say that I don't like musicals. I like some musicals. I think I probably am biased because I think the first musical I ever saw, my wife took me to the theatrical version of Rent.
Oh, wow.
And again, I'm a different person now, but at the time I was like, I don't really like the story, the characters, anything that's happening here. And the fact they're singing about it, I like even less. So, but, again, I can certainly, first of all, his name's escaped. Jesse Martin, who played Detective Green on Law and Order, was in that. I liked him. But in any case, Mary Poppins, pretty good. I thought Emily Blunt, again, I think she's a gorgeous woman. Seems to, echoes of Julie Andrews to me. Sure. Seems to play the character the way I remember. And again, I just confess, like I think I've seen Mary Poppins like one time and then bits and pieces over the years. So I'm not really qualified to give my full opinion on it, but it seemed pretty good. My wife liked it, so I'd say.
Yeah, I can kind of relate to. I'm the exact same way with that film. My wife, however, is a big fan.
Yeah.
So I've been forced to watch it a few times. We actually saw a stage production of it at one of the local high schools last year, which, I mean, they did a great job, but I did sleep through the second half.
Well, that's it's funny you say the second act, because like in Mary Poppins Returns, and I'm not going to spoil anything with specific plot points, but the one thing that was kind of bugging me the whole movie is Lin Miranda, man, again, the Hamilton guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's a major character in the movie, almost to the point where he's like overshadowing Mary Poppins. Like in the second half of the movie, he's driving the plot almost as much, if not more, than Mary Poppins is. And that was just a little, I don't know. I was just like, it's not called Jack Returns. It's called Mary Poppins Returns. Like, where's Emily Blunt? And maybe I'm overstating it because, I mean, it's not like she's gone from the movie necessarily, but there definitely is a sequence at the end where, she's sort of there, and every now and then will make like a little comment or quip, but like she's not driving any action. She's kind of just there. And I don't know. It just sort of weirded me out. But that, again, these are the judgments of a non-qualified musical reviewing man.
You know what kind of struck me with this film is why make that film now? It feels like the modern audience would not want to see a British musical.
Hmm.
You know, just in my opinion, and it just seems like something that's not going to do well, no matter how good it may be. I
Yeah.
don't think it's going to play to a wide audience.
Again, I'm not sure I could say. Is it? Well, again, we're talking about Disney, so I generally think that Disney has a scheme and a plan behind everything it does. I'm sure maybe market
Sure.
research or something. If I'm trying to see the best of them, maybe they've had different scripts over the years, and finally they had one they liked. I know there wasn't there some legal stuff too with like the writer of the original Mary Poppins stories, and they even did a movie about it.
I saw the movie. Yeah,
Yeah.
I did.
And maybe I don't mean to make light of it, but maybe she just died recently, and so that was kind of the green light. They could make the movie now, or so. I'm not sure. Again, I'm like I said, this isn't my area of expertise, but I do recall there being like so. Honest Trailers just did Mary Poppins, and they kind of made some jokes about that like the creator of the original stories hated the movie so much. And then Disney made a movie about her that made her look like a horrible old crone. I'm not sure if Honest Trailers is 100% accurate either, but this is what I've heard.
Disney's they've really, I don't know, man. Like you said, they probably have some sort of long game planned out here for this, but they're doing all the live action stuff now of
Right.
all their previous animated work, which I thought when I originally heard that it was some sort of, if you don't do anything with the property for a certain period of time, because they don't own Jungle Book.
Right.
I think they may own Aladdin. I guess Aladdin's probably an original story of theirs.
No, Aladdin's again they Disney-fied it, but Aladdin is in Arabian Nights.
That's right. That's right. So that may be the same type of deal there. They're just trying to keep the rights to that stuff because they did like 6 sequels to Aladdin, and that probably wasn't that long ago that Return of Jafar 12 came out.
Hey, I like Return of Jafar. In fact, Return of Jafar was the first sequel Disney ever did, and it went like straight to video. I think it was like them testing out that idea. I loved that movie. I used to sometimes I hum songs from that movie. Dan Castellaneta voices the genie, and he just can't. And for those who don't know offhand, but Dan Castellaneta is the voice of Homer Simpson, as well as many other voices, and he's an actual physical live action actor too. But he again, he can't approach the heights of Robin Williams, but I don't know, he does workmanlike quality, and I just like how
quite a feat, man. Quite a feat trying to do an impression of Robin Williams as the genie.
Yeah, it's. To be honest, it's funny. Like Dan Castellaneta might be one of the only people who could approach trying to do it and do a halfway decent job. He just doesn't have the range. Because I mean, like Dan Castellaneta will do like various voices, and they all sound like just variations of like Homer Simpson, really.
He's just saying no. He just kept going no.
Yeah. But yeah, no. I mean, I like that movie. I thought, and if I remember correctly, too. Sequence of events wise, like Return of Jafar was sort of like a backdoor pilot for the Aladdin TV series that aired on the Disney Channel after that.
That's right. I forgot about that.
And in fact, I think Disney had sort of a rule or some sort of internal kind of thing where they were saying that they didn't want their series to run past a certain point. And again, I confess I don't recall. Again, I didn't prepare for this trivia. I didn't realize this is the road we're going to go down. But it was something like they only wanted to do like say 2 seasons or something of a show before they'd end it. But Aladdin was so popular that they added like another season or 2. And so like they just kind of kept going. And then they eventually ended the series with the direct-to-video release of Aladdin and the King of Thieves. Which brought back, incidentally, Robin Williams as the genie. Dan Castellaneta didn't even get to finish out all of his work as the genie in that movie. And that kind of closed out the Aladdin story. Although I think the Aladdin cast Hercules once. Like they brought back Jafar, and Jafar teamed up with their bad guy. I forget who I never really watched Hercules in that show. I think wasn't James Woods the bad guy? like in the movie. I don't know
no
if he was in
idea.
the show. Well, in any case, that I remember the only reason I know about this is because I did like Return of Jafar so much, and at one point I had heard that Jafar came back another time, and that was it. Is like because Hercules deals with like the underworld. At that point, they were dealing with like Jafar's spirit in the underworld, and he teamed up with Hercules' villain to do something. But in any case, yeah. But yeah, I'm a huge Aladdin fan. That's why I'm interested in what they make of the live action Aladdin. I'm already a little disappointed because cartoon Jasmine is dressed like a stripper, and movie version, live action version is not. She's a little more covered up.
Are they people of Middle Eastern descent?
So I think Aladdin is. I confess, I'm not sure exactly what his level of but he's Indian, or he may actually be Middle Eastern. But Jasmine is played by the actress Naomi Scott, who recently played the Pink Ranger in the Power Rangers movie that they just did with Bryan Cranston a couple years back. And I thought she was British, but maybe I don't know. So I don't know if she. I do remember that they were very focused on trying to get like actual like Middle Eastern or Persian or even just Indian actors to be in the movie, just because the internet's lighting people on fire now if you don't cast your movie with the right intersectional groups.
I mean, when it's something like that, I think it is kind of important because it's regional.
That's true.
But I mean, the whitewashing, you can't dispute that stuff. I can't think of a good example, but that damn Matt Damon samurai movie.
Oh yeah,
that's a good example.
Well, I think I'm referring to Iron Fist. Like everybody was all pissed off because Iron Fist was a white guy, and I'm like, but Iron Fist is a white guy. That's the story. It's like a white dude who like goes over to. I don't know. I'm not a huge Iron Fist fan, but he goes over to China or wherever the hell he goes, and he kind of becomes the immortal Iron Fist, and then he comes back, and that's sort of the whole thing. Is it's like he's an outsider who takes on the mantle of this thing, but like the good folks at like the former Gawker news group, I remember they were pissed off about it. They're like, "Well, this is the chance to right a wrong." I mean, I guess that was the original story. I mean, if you want to change the story, do that, but that's not. Anyway.
That's a hot button issue now. So
yes, it is.
But I mean, I do agree with the most of the casting ideas there, because a lot of these you probably heard of the film. Is it Rich Asians or something like that that came out recently?
Yeah,
that's not the name of it, but it's something like that. And there was a whole discussion about Asian people not getting work in Hollywood and stuff, so
right,
they basically had to make their own film. But it has the Connie Yu, I believe her name is, off of Fresh Off the Boat. I don't know if you've seen that show.
My wife watches it more than I do, but what I've seen is funny because the actor on it, I can't think of his name, but the dad on the show, if you remember, he played Asian Jim in like the final season of The Office. And that one prank where Jim tried convincing Dwight that he's always been Asian, and Dwight just doesn't remember.
I didn't realize that was him until I went back and rewatched The Office a year or two ago. So yeah. That guy's all over the place. I can't remember his name either, but yeah.
He like, now that I've seen him on that show, again, now that I've seen him on Fresh Off the Boat, and he was also a quasi villain, but not really, in Ant-Man and the Wasp. I remembered when I just because since I've seen him more, like, and I'm always watching like older TV shows or digging into things from the past. He's in all kinds of things. Like he's been working for a long time, longer than I ever realized. And so but he's hilarious. He's funny.
He is.
I think that. Well, again, like you say, we could go down a whole road with this, with this particular subject about like the whitewashing. The point is I am excited for Aladdin. I do think it could be good. I know some people get down on Will Smith. I like Will Smith. I think Will Smith is funny and entertaining. It's that thing we were talking about before, where I think we all have Robin Williams in our mind. He's the genie. So I think whatever Will Smith does, and again, I don't know, but he's got to find a way to do his own thing. Like don't ape Robin Williams, because you just can't. No one can. I mean, think of honestly, Will Smith of the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air era. I think he, if he channels some of that, I really think he could do something kind of interesting and special with it. Because I think people forget he's actually a pretty good comedic actor.
Yeah. I agree with that. I think the problem is Will Smith has lost his mind, and he's a crazy person now. It's like George Lucas syndrome. When you live in your own bubble for long enough, you just go crazy.
I've said that. This is perhaps isn't a great segue, but that idea. I've always thought that George Lucas has great big picture ideas. Mm-hmm. He can build a universe and talk about he could write an outline. This is the universe. These are the things and the people in it. And this is what happens. But I just think that when it comes to actually getting into the nitty gritty of telling the stories about the things he's talking about, he doesn't really come through. Because I actually think some of the best Star Wars stories that we've seen recently came out of Star Wars Clone Wars. That series is fantastic. There are some really great episodes of that explore some issues that the movies only sort of just either mentioned or just slightly touched the surface of. Star Wars Rebels had some of that stuff too. And I even just think some of the concepts of the Force, the series gets into it in better ways than the movies ever did. And to be fair, the movies they're action adventure stories. You can't take 30 minutes of your movie off to go and philosophize about the Force. I get it. But I'm just making the point that I think him having a writer's room, Dave Filoni, who's been the showrunner for a lot of these, Star Wars animated or, kind of extended properties. I think he's done a great job. And just noting that George Lucas might be crazy when he's not kind of held in check, but even if he's just sort of sharing ideas out and someone else is executing them, I think that's a good combination. I think think about Empire, how everybody thinks Empire is the best Star Wars movie.
I was going to say that the exact same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not like he had nothing to do with the movie, because he did. He absolutely did. But you sort of have George Lucas' big idea being transformed by Lawrence Kasdan into an actual story with characters and plotting and just, great. I mean, Empire is just a fantastic movie, let alone Star Wars movie. So
I don't think he's a good director. I think he's a good writer and the big picture guy, like you were saying. Yeah.
Harrison Ford, I think, has been making that comment for years that he's a terrible director. Yeah. I mean, because he's Harrison Ford now, I think he's pretty blunt about it. He's been making that comment for years where it's I would add, somebody tell me if I'm wrong. There might be interview clips of him out there, but where he'd say, he has a line and he's like, I don't know, how should I read this? Or what's he thinking? And Lucas would just be like, yeah, just say the line. And he'd be like, okay, I guess I'll just figure it out myself. Which, that's, I think, sometimes why the original series was better than perhaps the prequels were, because, I mean, this isn't even quite accurate, but I just tend to think that you had kind of younger actors like Hayden Christensen and Natalie Portman were kind of being asked to just say the line, right? And Hayden Christensen was a brand new talent. And so everybody loves to pick on him But what he needed was a director. He needed someone
Yeah.
to like help him like read the scene and deliver the story the way it was meant to be delivered. You know, Natalie Portman too, I think she actually has become a much better actress. I think she like kind of learned and grew into it. But she was young too, and that's why she comes off very wooden.
Mhm.
Meanwhile, oh God, why can't I think of his name? Obi-Wan. But Ewan McGregor.
Mhm.
Ewan McGregor, though, even though he was young too, he was already a pretty decent actor who'd been in
Oh, yeah.
some things.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think even though he sometimes comes off as wooden, he acquits himself a little better. And then meanwhile, you know, Samuel Jackson, Liam Neeson, Ian McDiarmid, all of the old dudes who can act and do stuff. That's why they come off decently well in those movies. Like Ian McDiarmid owns Revenge of the Sith. Like he's hamming it up, but I mean, he's acting really, really well. I mean, he carries that movie on his back, basically.
So Lucas didn't give any of these people any direction. He's just like, okay, go, action.
I mean, to be fair, I'm going off of like, Harrison Ford interviews, and I might be overstating it a little bit, but if you've ever read the scripts for the Star Wars movies, and they're posted in various places, they're very simple. It's not even like the scene isn't even really described very much. I mean, it reads more like a play. And so it would seem to me that if that's all you have, you really have to rely on your director to kind of situate you as to what you're supposed to be doing. And keep in mind too, with the Star Wars prequels, these guys are all just standing like in the middle of a big green room. They're like, there's a big monster there. I go, like they don't have stuff to react to,
Right.
At least in the original trilogy, they were actually on location. They had actual sets. And again, Harrison Ford, good actor. Mark Hamill,
Right.
even though from a live action perspective, he didn't do a ton with his career. Like Mark Hamill's still good actor. Like he's great. Carrie Fisher is a good actress. Again, it's too bad her career kind of didn't do more, but she's decent, and the other folks too. But yeah, that's to me that's one of the failings of those movies, particularly the prequels, is you couldn't rely on the cast to be delivering that stuff. Plus, for the prequels, to your point about people like Will Smith basically can just go unchallenged. George Lucas could just go unchallenged. He writes a script, that's what they go film. At no point was anybody like reading that script and being like, George, what are midichlorians? What I don't know, man. Like no one was ever. And again, I don't know this. I wasn't inside Lucasfilm while they were reviewing these scripts. I could be wrong, but it just feels to me like someone who didn't have like a feedback loop.
Right.
You know?
There was no one to check the madness.
Right. Well, I mean, I actually do think creativity is born out of struggle.
Mm.
And, I don't want to get too philosophical about it, but I mean, obviously, the struggle inside you about the best way to tell a story or what story you should tell. But, even if you just like go and write a book, you still have like a proofreader, you have editors, they read it for you and give you, even if it's just like word choice feedback, you're sort of massaging the story all along. Or they may even call it like, hey, this guy goes here, but he couldn't because he was actually over here and he doesn't have a car. Just basic stuff like that. But it just seems like Lucas, for the prequels, he'd gotten so big and so powerful, he could make exactly the movies he wanted to make and no one was going to challenge him. And you know what? Godspeed that he reached that point in his career, but that doesn't mean that the work he turned in was that great either. Because he kind of, it was all on him, I think. Um, in any case, man, we've covered some topics here.
Rocky, George
Yeah,
Lucas.
the one Christmas themed thing I did want to do, just because I thought it would be interesting, and this, it would help us. We can talk about the episodes themselves. We can also talk about the series, but let's talk about our favorite Christmas episodes of TV shows. Um, you know, I'll pick on The Office, and actually, The Office is on my list. I'll just tell you too that The Office, I think with the exception of the first season and the fourth season, the first season aired after Christmas, and then the fourth season, because of the writer's strike, they didn't film a Christmas episode that year. They kind of skipped it. But all the other seasons have a Christmas episode. And so, there's like a Christmas party. There's always some shenanigans going on. For my list, I forced myself to choose my favorite of the Office Christmas episodes, because I could just probably put like 3 or 4 of those episodes in my list and cheat. But I'm not saying that you have to be held to that too. I'm just saying that's what I did.
Well, I try to think back on it, and some of them kind of run together. I can't quite place what happened in what episode. But
I mean, we can actually talk about them, because I'll say which one's my favorite, but we can talk about that.
Okay, cool.
But actually, if Jay, why don't you do you have anything you wanted to start us out with?
I was hoping my memory would get jogged by some of your picks, but
I can start if you'd like me to. I don't want to run roughshod over you, sir. So I didn't put my list in any particular order. Just because I wasn't sure. Like, I don't, with like Christmas episodes, it's sort of hard to like put them in an order of like what's the best Christmas episode versus, what's in, I don't know. So I didn't do it that way, but I'll actually, well, no, I think I'll start with one that I would think is my most affecting Christmas episode. And that is the Lost season 4 episode, The Constant. I don't think you got this far in Lost, Jay. And again, this is why we need to dig into that series a little more. But I'll try not to spoil it too much for you. But there was a couple on the series who part of their storyline is they had been separated for a very long time. And the episode sort of builds and builds and builds through this very sci-fi situation, which up to that point, Lost had sort of flirted with sci-fi. Like, there were things happening on the island that you just didn't think could really be explained by anything other than like a supernatural or like science fiction force, but the show sort of cloaked it, did a decent job of it. There was a previous episode featuring these characters that kind of came right out and got into elements of I'll just call it what it is, time travel. But it was sort of unclear, like, was it actually happening, or was it maybe like just in the person's head, or was it maybe just kind of like a quantum leap kind of a thing? I don't know. But this episode was kind of like full bore science fiction, time travel, doing some pretty zany stuff. And it all culminates in a phone call between these two characters who, the one character isn't even sure that the other one is alive, and they get to talk. The music swells, very emotional. Pretty sure my wife was crying the first time we watched it. And it was set at Christmas. Because Lost was a series, like some other series, where like each episode is roughly equivalent to a day. So, they crash landed in September. By the 4th season was about when they were kind of at, Christmas Day, and they got to do a pretty great story. I just, to be honest, the fact that it's a Christmas episode almost seems incidental. I mean, it is Christmassy time going on in the episode, but it's more about kind of like the big story with the main characters we're pursuing.
Well, for my first pick, I'm going to go a different direction.
Sure.
I was thinking a common trope to be used in those holiday episodes was like doing something nice for someone less fortunate.
Yeah.
And I immediately thought of Saved by the Bell.
Okay.
I don't know if you remember, it's the episode when like Zach is like working in the mall or something. He's at the mall, and he finds out that there's this guy who's like homeless, and the guy's kind of trying to apply for a job and all this stuff, and then he finds out that the homeless guy's daughter is kind of hot. So he wants to like date her, but also help them out. So anyway, long story short, he invites them, home to, have Christmas dinner with him and his family, and make himself feel better in all the ways. I was telling you to watch that show, Zach Morris is Trash, and that episode really highlights all of that trashiness on the part of Zach Morris. But yeah, good stuff.
it's kind of endemic of sitcoms. I think sometimes like sitcoms, like there's a good sitcom story to be told about a lot of things. But I think if you were to just step outside and like take one step back and you look at like what the characters are doing and how they're behaving, you think this is kind of terrible. Like this isn't great. And I think some of the Zach Morris stuff is like that. Because even though I've not watched this, it sounds like you actually watched that like series of videos. They come up in my feed a lot, and so I see like what they're talking about, and it's like reminding you of Saved by the Bell episodes and things that Zach did, and you're kind of like, oh yeah, that was kind of shitty.
But, I kind of watched it with colored glasses when I first saw it. Not seeing it for what it truly is, and that series really puts it into perspective, and really, man, it's some terrible stuff.
Right. I think my next choice is I'll go. Most of my list is fairly contemporary, so I'll jump to the oldest episode that I have on my list, which is I'm pretty sure MASH had more than one Christmas episode, but there is one I remember from one of MASH's later seasons that and people usually pick on the later seasons, but I just thought this was a pretty affecting episode. I think it was from their 1980 season, and it was called Death Takes a Holiday. And the basic premise of the show was that there was a wounded soldier who they couldn't really save. Like he was going to die. Like they did surgery, they did everything they were going to do, but he was just wounded too badly. And this happened on it happened on Christmas Eve or something like that, or they got him on Christmas Eve or Christmas morning, or I don't know exactly, but basically they were like, we can't let this guy die on Christmas so that like his family will remember like their dad died on Christmas. So the episode is basically Hawkeye, BJ, and Houlihan keep this guy alive until midnight on Christmas so that technically he dies the day after Christmas. And I've seen that episode, I think just a handful of times, maybe two at most, but sometimes I always thought MASH could be a little too heavy-handed. Like again, MASH was a good comedy. I thought it did some good drama. I thought sometimes it was a little too heavy-handed, a little too moralizing, but this was just a good like character episode. And I thought it was just a different, interesting spin on kind of the idea of Christmas and, something that they were going to do to, make themselves feel better and to, help this guy's family who, they were never going to meet. But I just thought that was a good and interesting choice that when I was kind of doing my research for this, I hadn't thought about that episode in a long time. And I remembered that I liked it a lot.
Mm-hmm. I've never, I haven't watched much MASH at all.
Oh, really?
Is that something you would recommend?
I would, particularly the first, I don't know, let's call it the first 3 seasons of MASH are really funny. Like MASH really leaned into like it's like being a comedy in the first 3 seasons. And it's not like it ever stopped being a comedy, but I think at a certain point they sort of decided that they could they were in a war. So, I mean, naturally they're even in those episodes, there's some serious, content, but I think they sort of realized they could like make bigger statements and they could tell different kinds of stories that weren't strictly, comedy sitcom type stuff. Which again, I think sometimes they did really well at, other times I don't think so. I would argue that the finale of MASH, the last episode of MASH, is one of the best in history. Just the way it kind of closes out the whole series and the war and other things. It does a really good job of that. But yeah, I would, even if just to kind of dabble, maybe try out the first few episodes, because the first few episodes of the show are pretty funny. That first season in particular is, I forget who the writers were exactly, but I mean, I think if you look at their writers room, they had some pretty great people on staff, and the acting talent was at the top of their game too. So yeah, MASH is definitely recommended. It's got 11 seasons though. That's why I'm giving you this sort of hesitating answer. Is it's like there's other things I'd prefer you watch, Jay, and and MASH is good,
Sure.
but it's something maybe kind of use it as a filler. Like maybe you're doing some other things and you have like a free 30 minutes or so, pop a MASH in.
Sure. I think that last episode is still like one of the highest watched.
Oh yeah.
Highest watched moments in television.
I
believe
think
so.
I mean, I think that's a status it's going to have forever. Like, I don't think it will ever be. And I
Yeah.
almost think it's unfair to compare it to like even sporting events too, because with the Super Bowl, just random people will watch the Super Bowl
Right.
just because it's like, oh, I want to watch the commercials.
Exactly. How many people do you know that watch it just for the commercials?
Right.
That don't like sports at all or whatever.
Right. Whereas MASH, MASH had a decent audience to begin with, and there were probably people that watched it and then fell off the wagon over the years, and then they came back for the finale. So, yeah, I think MASH is, they're big on. There was a joke too that I think has been, or a myth that I think has been disproven. There was like apparently maybe you've heard this, that after the finale of MASH aired, like the water pressure in New York City like took a sizable dip because basically people were not going to the bathroom, so they all went after it was over. But I'm pretty sure I read an article somewhat recently that was like, yeah, that's not true.
That's funny.
like even if basically it's like even if all the people that like were in New York were watching MASH and they flushed their toilets, like it wouldn't cause the impact that this is suggesting it would.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's one of those shows that I probably had an opportunity to watch, plenty of times when I was a kid, but it was probably maybe a little too heavy, for it's like, I don't really want to watch something about war right now, but,
Right.
because I didn't really know a whole lot about it, but, I did watch a lot of that from the 50s and 60s, sitcoms and stuff when Nick at Night first came out.
Yeah. There's a ton of shows that I started watching and I sort of grew to either like or maybe dislike, but that I watched because my parents did. So my parents watched MASH, and then when I was a kid, I think Fox or the Fox affiliate where I lived used to have like MASH reruns on in the evening. So like if I wanted to watch TV, like that's what my parents were watching, that's what I would watch. They're not like at the time, and I eventually did get my own TV, but like my little daughter right now, like we can send her into her playroom. It's like, here, go watch Peppa Pig. We're watching something out here. Like I originally didn't have a TV, so and even if I did, I think the one I had at first only had like a VCR, so like I could put in like a tape or something, but I couldn't watch like cable. So like MASH is a show that I started watching because my parents did. The same is true for series like All in the Family and Barney Miller and some of those. In fact, I think I became probably a bigger fan of like All in the Family than even my parents. So I started getting like caught up on like the plot lines and different things and all the various spin-offs that came out of that show. And so I'm pretty sure I've seen every episode of All in the Family, but I've never been able to find Archie. Like Archie Bunker's Place started airing, and then for whatever reason, like I couldn't watch it or I wasn't able to see all of it. But like I wanted to watch it because I know like Edith Bunker dies on Archie Bunker's Place, and there's like probably the most significant episode of that series. I finally did see it eventually, but I kind of remembered that was one reason I really wanted to see that show. And it's just interesting too because it's like All in the Family became Archie Bunker's Place is like a sequel. Like how often do TV shows get a sequel? There are spinoffs, but I mean, this was literally like All in the Family is done. Now our same characters are kind of just doing something different, sort of.
Well, it's like other shows. It kind of became Archie's show anyway,
Yeah.
It's kind of like, The Simpsons started out with Bart being the main character and it turned into Homer,
Yeah. Which is funny because on South Park, even though the kids are still a major star, Stan's dad Randy has definitely like his profile has raised on that show to the point where like they'll dedicate entire episodes to whatever Randy's doing. So MASH was just, again, I think MASH is my oldest I'm looking at my list here. Well, so I don't want to jump you. Do you have what would be next on your list? Have I jogged anything free for you?
Sure. A lot of I don't know. It's kind of like it seems like more shows are doing it now, but it's like in maybe the 90s and 2000s, like shows weren't really they weren't doing Halloween episodes. They weren't doing Christmas episodes. You
Right.
know, I think The Office may be one of the exceptions to that, but one that immediately came to mind is the Friends episode, the one with the holiday armadillo, which is actually more about Hanukkah than Christmas. But
Yeah.
Ross Ross is trying to teach his son about about Hanukkah, and I forget the reason why, but the costume shop didn't have whatever costume he was looking for, and he
Hmm.
wound up dressing up like an armadillo, which is just hilarious. But a really funny episode, and you know, I'm not really familiar with a lot of the things around Hanukkah, so I actually learned a little bit in that episode. So that was nice.
Yeah. And I think Friends might have been one of the few shows that would do holiday episodes,
Mhm.
if not every year, almost every year, or they
Yeah.
dedicate some time to it. Or
Yeah.
if they didn't do a Christmas episode, maybe they would do a Thanksgiving episode or something like that. Um, yeah, no,
I kind
that's
of like it, man. I mean, I'm a sitcom person. I love sitcoms, so I like the home improvements that do the
yeah,
Halloween and the Christmas episodes, and
you know, that's I'm gonna update my list actually right on that because my wife and I we didn't really talk about it at the top of the show, but we've been rewatching Buffy and Angel,
oh, cool.
which we hadn't. My wife has only seen them once. I've seen them now. This might be my third or fourth time through, maybe more than that. But I still have only like really watched those two series. Like just 'cause I like them so much, they're kind of a series I don't just revisit um, willy nilly. Like I kind of want to get really into it, sort of if that makes sense. Um,
Right.
but because we've been doing that, it kind of knocked us off. We were rewatching Home Improvement, which I
Oh,
was
really?
shocked to find, like, just how much we were laughing and how much we were really
Yeah.
enjoying it. Um, and so I would note that, and I don't know that I can pick a specific episode, but I did like that Home Improvement every year would do a Christmas episode, but in particular, there would always be like a B story about like the Christmas lights that Tim is putting up. And I can't remember if it was like in the final season or in one of the later seasons where like it's like Al or Jill is on a plane and they're trying to come home and there's like a bad snowstorm or fog or
Yeah.
something and like the plane is trying to land and like Tim like activates his Christmas lights and I think I'm remembering this as Home Improvement. Like he turns on his Christmas lights and they're so bright and like illuminating that it like the plane sees them and can kind of orient itself so it can land and the plane can come back. I believe that that's a Home Improvement episode. I hope I'm right on that.
Yeah.
Um,
When you brought up this topic, I immediately thought of a show that's mainly in the airport, and that may be it. That may be the one I'm thinking of. Someone was trying to get home for Christmas. Uh, almost like a planes, trains, and automobiles type scenario.
yeah,
Uh, but yeah, and I couldn't place in my head what show that was, but yeah, that's probably it.
it's but yeah, Home Improvement has been a pleasant surprise because for whatever reason, sometimes I would see it on reruns like on Nickelodeon or whatever networks
Yeah.
it's on, and I always kind of avoided it, just kind of like I don't want to watch Home Improvement. But
It's kind of like a guilty pleasure type thing. It's I mean, I can recognize that it's you don't have to think a whole lot to get the jokes and Home Improvement. It's
you know what's interesting about Home Improvement that I have found is that even though this is kind of a difference with, and again, I don't want to turn us all political here again, but like Home Improvement, I liked because even though Tim was kind of like a buffoon who would like break the dishwasher because he tried to give it like a gas powered engine or whatever weird thing he would do,
yeah,
Tim wasn't like a shrinking violet. Like he wasn't just like, oh, anything his wife said, he was just like, oh, okay, fine, I'll just do it. Like he didn't just sort of accept Jill being the boss all the time.
Mhm.
And just in some of the exchanges that they have on the show, I just, because, I'm watching again, it's like, it's sort of that I have the benefit of, it's now 2018 and I'm watching a show that was like in the early to mid 90s. Like, they'll get into arguments, and like, Tim will take like a very bold stance, and like the way they'll argue, and sometimes like Jill turns out to be wrong, which I
Mhm.
was shocked. I was like, wait, I don't remember that.
Yeah.
Um, and so I guess and again, I think it's because Tim Allen was, like the executive producer or one of them, and like one of the people kind of like guiding the show. He was like, what struck me is like, because I'm married, you're married too. When you think about the kinds of discussions and maybe the arguments or whatever that you have with your wife, it's not like, and again, we can joke about it, but in real life, it's not like your wife is always right. It's not like you're always right either. If you were to watch TV these days, the women moms and characters are always the smartest, and the men are always underestimating them, and they always
Mhm.
come out on top in the end. Like, which, fine, but I was just kind of interested that the show seemed to be kind of playing it somewhat even-handedly between Jill and Tim. And I say that completely accepting that, this is still a guy who will put like airplane landing lights on his roof for Christmas. They still treat him like a big goofball. Like, it's not like I'm making Tim out to be some sort of great, like, he's not like Dick Van Dyke or something. But it was interesting to me to see that. And I don't know whether if you remember that aspect of Home Improvement or not,
Yeah.
but it's something that struck me.
It's a really interesting show. There's a really good documentary on YouTube that really covers the whole span of the show, and
Really?
a lot of inside stuff I wasn't aware of.
Hmm.
But yeah, it really goes in some heavy directions sometimes. I don't know if you remember the episode where I think his name was Randy, whatever, Jonathan Taylor Thomas. They thought he had cancer.
Yeah, I remember that.
That's like, man, that was like fighting tears just watching the footage of that from that documentary. They really do a good job. I mean, Jonathan Taylor Thomas did a good job acting in that show, and
Yeah.
it's unfortunate that he left. I think. But,
Yeah, I don't think he came back for the final season. And if I'm not mistaken, and well, maybe you know better than I do because maybe it was in the documentary, but I remembered reading that Tim Allen wasn't really very happy with him. He was kind of like, "Listen, if you don't want to do like the whole season or whatever, that's fine. Like, I get it."
yeah,
But I think he wanted him to come back for like the finale at least, and
yeah.
I don't think he would. Like, he wouldn't do that either. And so I think Tim Allen was kind of pissed at him for a while.
They were very, very close on that set. All of those actors, and he thought, thought of those kids as his kids, and he
Mhm.
was like a second dad to these kids because he, watched them grow up for however many years that was, and
Yeah,
he was just, it's kind of like I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed type thing,
yeah.
and he took it personally. I think
Well, they
when he left.
I think they definitely patched it up because I'm pretty
Mhm.
sure. I think he's actually appeared more than once, but he's been on the show that got brought back on Fox, was
Oh,
Last
really?
Man Standing.
Mhm.
Yeah, he's Jonathan Taylor Thomas has been on that show at least once, maybe twice. I think all of those actors have appeared on that show once or twice, except for Wilson, of course. Wilson died.
Mhm.
Um, we could get B movie Mike though to play him.
Yeah, that's right. That's
This is a,
right.
this is a deep track reference.
Got a Wilson stand-in.
You would have to have watched the latest Sausage Factory episode to get that one, folks. Um, yeah, but no, I'm glad you brought up Home Improvement because that's, again, we need to get back to it, and maybe even that's something that I can work in, like I'm suggesting you do with MASH, is because we were sort of heavy
Mhm.
into Buffy and Angel, and sometimes because those are like 45-minute shows, and we watch it on
Yeah.
Hulu, and I don't pay to get rid of the commercials, so it is closer to an
Oh
hour.
no, yeah, I can't do it. I have to. It's like 11.99 with no commercials, I think. So,
I'm just being super cheap. Like, I should just pay for it. Like,
I,
I don't know why I don't. I just, part of it is I got a really good rate. Basically,
right.
they have this Hulu has this promotion where you can get it for like $5.99 a month. And you still have commercials, but the normal rate is like $7 or $8.99 with commercials. But because I was like a customer for so long, or it was just a
Mhm.
promotion they were running. I've got like the $5.99 rate, and I don't know. I'm like, having commercials, that's worth the extra $3 or whatever it is. But you're right, because honestly, it's driving me insane.
Yeah.
The Hulu commercials, it's always the same commercials. There are no, like, it's like my wife and I are starting to go mad. Like, there's this one commercial up here. So in the Pacific Northwest, I mean, this is true. Different areas have different cable and internet providers, but we have one that's called Frontier, and Frontier is kind of like Verizon. Like, they do FiOS internet and FiOS cable, like, so fiber optic stuff. And they just have this commercial. I'm not going to do it justice, and I really don't want to, but it's like this hipster dude. Like, I'm not even sure I can explain it. It's like he's like singing a play. So it's like one of those plays where like the characters in the play don't talk. Like, there's a person on the side who like talks for the people in it. And he just does this stupid song about like these people trying to watch a movie, but their internet isn't fast enough. So it's taking too long. It's like this big stupid thing. And it's just gotten to the point where whenever it comes on, like, I just like bury my head in my hands. My little girl, she started to sing it. So like, it's like doubly painful, because like, even if she's in the room, if she hears it, I can hear it from the other room, singing the song. And I'm like, stop, please.
Yeah, man. I was able to justify it to myself when I cut the cord. I was like, okay, I had like a $200 a month, bill for my cable.
Yeah.
So I was like, so yeah, I'm going to pay a few extra dollars, because I despise commercials. And whenever we watch anything on like the Food Network app or the HGTV app, it'll be like 5 commercials, and sometimes it will be the same commercial 5 times in a row.
Yes, that happens.
It'll drive you crazy. It will.
It like, so this is actually a good segue, because on my list for this, I do have a favorite, but I picked Mystery Science Theater's Christmas episodes.
Okay.
They've done 3 of them. My favorite is still season 5's Santa Claus, which is the Mike Nelson episode, the Mike Nelson Christmas episode, which features actually a funny joke about the fact that now Mike is the host, because one of the robots, Gypsy, was knitting a sweater that she was going to give to Joel, but then Joel left, and now it's Mike, so she has a sweater that it says Joikey. It's Joike. It's like, well, I was working on it, so that's the present she gave Mike for Christmas, which I always thought was funny. But even though I prefer, it's like I prefer the movie segments of that Christmas episode of Mystery Science Theater to the movie segments of the Joel episode. Just I think the Santa Claus movie, which, by the way, so the synopsis of this movie is the devil, who apparently is an opponent of Santa Claus's, is trying to corrupt children on Earth. So Santa Claus needs to like come down and like help these kids, as well as deliver presents around the world. And it was this was like, I think it was a Mexican production. So like, just this red leotarded devil guy is like convincing these 3 little boys to do bad things and to try and like get Santa Claus. And then there's just this sweet little girl whose like mom is poor, who the devil's like whispering in her ear to like get her to steal a doll she wants. And there's just these goofy things going on. And then like Santa too, it isn't even like Santa lives at the North Pole. It's like Santa lives on the moon or something. And he's got all this weird technology that like helps him do what he does. Anyway, I prefer that movie and the riffing that goes with it. But the Joel episode, which is Santa Claus versus the Martians, has the better host segments with Joel and the bots like celebrating Christmas. It has the famous Patrick Swayze Christmas song that is infinitely singable and hummable. I was humming it earlier today, in fact. And there's even just some other fun aspects to that episode. The movie is funny in its own way, but it just it doesn't strike me the way the other one does. And then the newest, well, it's not the newest season now. They're on season 12, but the first new season that came to Netflix last year did a Christmas episode for a movie called The Christmas That Almost Wasn't. Um, I'm perhaps tainted that I have some serious criticisms of the new seasons on Netflix and
Yeah,
stuff.
I knew
So
you
I'm gonna um it's fine. Like, again, it's a Christmas episode. There's some funny jokes with the movie. There's some the segments are okay. But yeah, I think in order, I definitely prefer the Mike one for the making fun of the movie, prefer the Joel one for the theaters for the host segments, and then I'll probably watch the other one. I probably need to give it a couple, like another chance to check it out. But um, anyway, I mentioned that because it's sort of like I understand the punishment those guys go through when they have to like write the movies they watch, or they have to like watch the movie like 10 times in a row. It's like watching the commercials on Hulu. It's like you just start to go crazy.
Oh man.
And then for bonus, I did mention that Rifftrax, which is done by the guys who used to do Mystery Science Theater. We're actually probably going to watch this tonight, my family and I. They have they always release like a holiday episode too, or like a holiday riff.
Mm.
Years ago, it's now several years old, but they did the Star Wars holiday special, which
Oh wow, yeah.
is and it's funny too because the version that they riff has commercials. So you watch the Star Wars holiday special, but then you get these really great like 1979 or 1978 um like commercials. So there's like commercials for like 60 minutes, like Leslie Stahl's like really young. There's like a commercial for like All in the Family and just various other things. And there's like toy commercials that are really funny. And again they make fun of that too. So it's like they make fun of the movie, but they make fun of these 70s era commercials. It's a really really great thing. And it sounds like the Mike Nelson, Kevin Murphy, and Bill Corbett. They're the guys who do Rifftrax. It sounds to me like they were drinking when they did this because they're just like laughing and giggling at their jokes, and they don't really do that as much in any other episode. So just as a bonus note, that's something else I'd consider as a favorite Christmas thing. It's even a tradition. But anyway, I'll take a breath and let you respond.
That's funny, man. Oh man, that Star Wars holiday special is awful, man.
It's unwatchable. Like that's why we watch it with Rifftrax. It's unwatchable. To be honest, even with Rifftrax, it's a little rough because it's just madness put to film. But that's if I had to watch it without funny commentary, I barely make it 10 minutes. It's nonsensical.
Oh, gosh, and the only way it exists is like on someone's recording, right? That's why it had the commercials in it.
Yeah, like different people have different recordings. Rifftrax, and I don't even know how they did this exactly, but you can actually stream it for so if you buy it from their site, like you don't have to sync anything up or like have your own copy. You can stream it from rifftrax.com. They have a video on demand version that you can stream or you can download and it's all together. I don't know how. Maybe because like Lucasfilm has like disavowed it, like they don't have any legal, or they don't fight for it like legally, like they do everything. I don't know how they do it, but
That is
for that
interesting.
you can get it with their commentary, so it's pretty good.
You couldn't even release like a Star Wars themed like porno and not get sued by these. I guess Disney now.
Well, no, I mean you can, and I don't. I didn't watch it. Let me just be clear about that. But I remember on YouTube, I did just see a commercial for Hand Solo, a triple X story.
Well, I guess if it's far enough from
Yeah.
the original source material.
Well, I think what they do, and this is an actual like legal thing. If you can kind of copy anything you want to copy as long as you're parodying it.
Mm-hmm.
There's a specific like legal precedent's the wrong word, but like legally speaking, because these things have been litigated over the years, like on First Amendment grounds, that you can copy something or like use someone else's like copyright or trademark or whatever, as long as you are making like a comment or a parodying judgment about it. That's why, and this is the part on Family Guy once, there was a like a reference they did to Cheers, where like I think Norm starts to like choke Woody or something. Fox made them add a line where like after they show like Peter's watching it on his TV, but after they show it, Peter makes a comment, that show stopped being funny after Kirstie Alley ate Shelley Long.
Oh wow.
As much as that's funny, that line was added so that it was parody. Just doing kind of like a mocked up clip of Cheers, like the Fox legal people thought, you know, this would be safer if you add that line, then it's parody and we're protected. And again, just so anybody watching this, I'm not a lawyer. This is not legal advice. Let me be clear about that.
Yeah.
This is my understanding. I learned that I took a course in college about this a little bit too, but that's kind of the key. Is it like parody is kind of a protection for. That's how like the Daily Show and Stephen Colbert and a lot of those things would get away with like some of the clips and the things that they would do, because it's being treated as like parody, as comedy, as commentary about things. So like
Right.
if the Daily Show was like really like tearing apart some politician and they wanted to like sue for defamation or whatever, first off, politicians can't really sue for that. I think because they're public figures, they like receive less protection than like you or I would. But on top of that, they're also protected by like parody stuff. So there's a few elements there.
That's explains how Saturday Night Live and other shows do similar things.
Yeah, it's like First Amendment is really what's protecting it, which good.
Sure. I mean, I don't know. I just wonder, like if I put a 10-second clip of, say, a Star Wars film on my YouTube channel, I would get a strike and that video would get taken down. But if Red Letter Media does it, it's okay.
Yeah, I don't. And there's even because there's like, so have you ever heard of a Stupendous Wave? I don't know. He does these like Star Wars think pieces, as much as that's a thing. And again, I don't want to pick on him. I actually do like his videos. I watch him sometimes. But like sometimes he will show scenes or images from Star Wars and he doesn't get picked on either. I don't really know how that's policed. I can, because I'm with you. Like it's unclear to me why some, because you're right, there are some even YouTube, again, like Red Letter Media can actually use a clip with sound of something and they don't get a strike. But if someone else does it and it's used even just roughly the same way, they get a ding on them for copyright. Like I don't know if it's just, I wonder if it's YouTube more than it's the copyright holders. Is like that YouTube has some sort of policy or something that like what's fair use and what's not. I don't know.
They get to play God, I guess.
Yeah.
Over who they want to police and who they don't. Yeah. Who they're actually making ad revenue off of versus someone like me that they make no money off of.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. I always wonder that, but I mean, I do like I like a lot of stuff Red Letter Media does. So I'm just curious as how they're able to get away with it because Mike he got a couple strikes on his channel for just still images.
See, I don't get that because again, the channel I'm referencing, Stupendous Wave, and he also does Marvel videos now, Marvelous Wave. He uses still images, and I have no idea why some of that's allowed and why some of it's not. But I think that's
a bit much.
That's lame. So I'm sorry. Where were we?
Is it my turn or your turn?
I don't remember because I think you got me going on. Well, I think it is your turn because I went off about like the Mystery Science Theater stuff and Rifftrax.
That's right. Well, real quick, I'll bring us back into horror for a second. Have you seen the Tales from the Crypt episode, All Through the House and All Through the House?
Maybe. I don't know if I know it by that name.
I believe it's the second episode, I think, of season 1. It's directed by Robert Zemeckis. But anyway, Larry Drake is dressed up as a crazy Santa Claus.
Larry Drake could do that. Yeah.
So it's a pretty. I mean, I think it's widely held as one of the better episodes of the show. But it's a really good one.
Look at the cast too. Mary Ellen Trainor. Wasn't she the psychiatrist from the Lethal Weapon movies?
The name sounds very familiar. I'm not sure.
I think she was the psychiatrist that's always trying to talk to Riggs, and he's always picking on her. Again, just from her IMDb photo, that looks like who that actress is. I didn't click through.
Yeah, I think you're right.
But I'm sorry, but what was the plot of the? So he's dressing up as Santa, and he's like an escaped mental patient.
Yeah, well, she, I think, kills her husband one way or another. I don't exactly remember how. And then he is an escaped mental patient and breaks in and basically just terrorizes her for the rest of the episode.
Oh, interesting. Oh, yeah, this does look interesting. Oh, and the writer, Fred Decker. Wasn't Fred Decker also the writer of Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3?
I'm not sure about that. I know he did. He directed RoboCop 3, which is not good, but
understatement.
I shouldn't have started with that. But yeah, Night of the Creeps and Monster Squad were his also.
I feel like I don't know. Again, if only we had some sort of portal to all the knowledge in the known universe.
If only if it was at our fingertips.
Yeah.
But he was a writer on that new Predator movie too, which people are saying that's not too great, but
yeah,
unfortunately,
I guess I was wrong. I thought he was like a writer on Nightmare on Elm Street, but clearly that's not true. Or Nightmare. I thought it was Part 3. Maybe there's a different Decker I'm thinking of, but in any case, no, that's a good reference. And again, Tales from the Crypt, I appreciate it just because of its. There was an episode. I was going to put an episode of The Twilight Zone on here that I've seen before. I forget the name of it now. I ultimately went against it just because it's like an anthology show. For whatever reason, that's just not how I went with it. Sure. But it's perfectly valid. It's it's an episode you can do. Okay, well, let's keep it in the horror mold then, which I actually do have. The X-Files, 6th episode of its 6th season, an episode called "How the Ghosts Stole Christmas," guest starring Ed Asner and Lily Tomlin. Basically,
they were in the haunted house, right?
Yeah, it was basically like Mulder calls up Scully on like Christmas Eve or something, and he's like, "Hey, there's this house. I hear it's haunted," and like. He was just going to go down there by himself.
Right.
And I think she's like convinced him, like, don't do it alone, or she's like trying to stop him just because it's Christmas. And she goes along with him. And then they go in the house. And if I remember correctly, it's like they can't get out of the house. And like the house sort of becomes like one of those things where it's like they go through a door and it's like the same room. And then Ed Asner and Lily Tomlin are trying to convince them to like kill themselves or kill each other. Because they're like the two ghosts who like were there, and I think they did that to each other when they were alive or something like that. But Christmas is only the X-Files could do. It was a pretty good episode.
Yeah, I remember that one quite well. It's I need to go revisit some of those.
I just like it for Ed Asner. Like I've always liked him as an actor, and he does a lot of great voice work. Like he's voiced a lot of characters for things. I think notably like J. Jonah Jameson from the Spider-Man cartoon in the 90s. Like he's the voice of him. Does a great job. Wow. He's still around and kicking. And of course, Ed Asner was Santa Claus, wasn't he? In Elf?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, yeah. So yeah, good. God, he's still alive too, isn't he?
I think so.
Yeah. Around and kicking. Good for Ed Asner. But yeah, that would be my entry into horror. I don't think I've got anything else that's like a horror entry. I do have. Well, I'm sorry, you go, and then I can, unless you have something else. But I do have something else that could kind of apply.
I don't think Buffy did anything really.
Well, so they did. That was what I was going to say. Is they have one Christmas episode. Well, there might be other episodes that happen kind of around Christmas. I think in the final season, that episode's kind of around Christmas, but they have an actual Christmas episode in the third season called Amends. And it's about this entity called the First Evil is trying to convince Angel to kill himself. That it's basically haunting him with all of the people he's murdered and killed when he was Angelus, like the evil version of himself. And at the end, he can't bring himself to kill himself. So what he's gonna do is he's just gonna go stand on a hill outside, and when the sun comes up, he'll just get turned to dust. Mm-hmm. But it's like a Christmas miracle because Sunnydale's been going through a big heat wave and it's sunny and 65, but all of a sudden there's a big storm and it's overcast and it snows. So when the sun is supposed to come up, there's cloud cover and it can't. Right. It can't. So he doesn't turn to dust, and Sunnydale gets snow for the first time in forever, and a whole big thing.
Okay, well, cool. Yeah, I was thinking that they never did anything. It's like we always argue: is that a Christmas movie? Is it not? A lot of shows, sure. I mean, it was happening around Christmas time, but it was never made it a plot point that the fact that it's Christmas.
This definitely. That's kind of why I think this qualifies, because it was definitely it was Christmas time, and that was kind of why the episode kept making a point to talk about how warm and stuff it was, because people were out shopping. I think they were wrapping presents at one point. Okay. And it's a Christmas miracle at the end that it's snowing and the sun can't break through to Dust Angel. He should live. And it's an interesting thing too, because to just talk about Buffy for a moment. I always thought it was interesting how Buffy kills Angel at the end of season 2, or basically sends him to a hell dimension to stop the world from ending. It's a whole thing. I don't want to get into the whole detail, but that's what happens. She kills him and he's dead. But then he comes back, a few episodes into season 3, and as far as I know, there was never really an official explanation as to why Angel came back, unless because I remember I was watching for it as we were doing our rewatch this time, trying to figure out why. And I'm wondering if maybe the First Evil tried to bring him back so he could kill Buffy or do something like that, but I don't know. And on his own series, they've made comments about how Angel has this big destiny, and his big opponents, the villainous firm, Wolfram and Hart, they won't ever really kill Angel because he's supposed to be an important figure in the apocalypse. So they can oppose him and they can make his life miserable, but they can't outright kill him because then it would ruin what they've got, what they think the future is going to be. But I don't know. It's just a random thought I had that I didn't really understand. Angel came back, but other than him coming back so that he could star in his own spinoff after the third season of Buffy, I don't know that there was ever a plot reason described as to why he's back.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah. But anyway, I just went twice in a row then, because but Buffy did have a Christmas episode, and it's a good one. Yeah, that's actually one of the better ones of the show.
Okay. I wanted to mention one of my favorite shows, News Radio. They did a few. Yeah, they did a few, and it was a show kind of had some problems with the production. Obviously, losing Phil Hartman. Yeah, and other things going on, but there the last Christmas episode they did. Matthew had gotten fired. That's Andy Dick's character.
Yeah,
and he was pretty annoying on the show, and in real life, I think. But he had gotten fired for whatever reason, and the boss agrees to hire him back if these guys can win a talent competition. Totally ridiculous plot, but anyway, they all go and they all have their own talents, and they're all ridiculous and stupid and funny in their own ways. But eventually Matthew wins the talent competition on pity alone because his performance is so terrible, and he gets hired back on the show. So that's that's how that one goes.
It's interesting to me that you would pick, because Phil Hartman died before the last season, so that might have been the first one without him, or the first Christmas episode without him.
I don't remember if he was in that one or not. I think he was. He was in that one. They must have just not done a Christmas episode after, because they did one season with John Lovitz. It was just, I believe, just one season.
After Phil Hartman died, like the ratings went in the toilet. Like I think people watched initially to see what they would do.
I mean,
but
John Lovitz,
Phil Hartman replacement.
That's a hard thing to overcome when one of your main stars, gets murdered.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah.
I'll go ahead.
I've got. So I was wondering if I should save this for last, but if you're going to go with news radio, I think this is just a good companion to it. The infamous, well, not infamous, but the famous Seinfeld episode, The Strike, in season 9, which is otherwise known as the episode where we learn, as George was a young man, his father created his own Christmas holiday called Festivus, which lays out all kinds of rules, and there's no Christmas tree. There's just like a big aluminum pole that you set up, and it's done because you can't really decorate it, so you just kind of set it up there, and you can put presents around it. You air grievances at the Festivus night dinner. And it was Frank Costanza's attempt to, I think, push back against like the commercialization of Christmas, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, he was like he was fighting over a doll for George, and he realized how stupid what he was doing was.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh man, yeah, that's a great episode. And I wish I had thought to bring that up.
And Kramer, I believe, becomes an adopter of Festivus, and so he's like all into it. I'm trying to remember how that one ends, but if I'm not mistaken, I think it ends with like the airing of the grievances. I think like George just gets yelled at over the Festivus dinner or something like that.
That may be the one where he, for whatever reason, George has to bring his boss, I think it's Mr. Kruger, home to prove that Festivus is a real thing.
Yes. Yes, because he's trying to use it as a holiday or something like that.
He whatever made up, he got out of something or used it as an excuse for something, previously in the episode. He's like, "Oh no, come on over here."
Yeah.
And it's hilarious. I was trying to think. I was like, Seinfeld, doesn't really have a lot of Christmas stuff, but I mean that's one, and then I think of the other one where Elaine sends out a Christmas card.
Oh, the nipple Christmas card.
And then there's also the one that's another good episode with the sweater, the cashmere sweater with the little red dot defect on it that George buys for Elaine, and she figures out that he got it on sale and winds up giving it to the cleaning lady that he was sleeping with.
Yes. The God, I don't know that there was a show ever and since that ever like took its varied plot strands and brought them together so well at the end.
Mm-hmm.
So somehow Seinfeld would find a way, again, even just like the whale story that George tells, and Kramer's like hitting golf balls into the ocean. Like, who would have thought that the whole George lying about being a marine biologist would dovetail into that? Like, it was so good. The writing on that show was truly fantastic. I think it's worth noting because a lot, I think when people choose like their favorite Seinfeld episodes, a lot of them will come from the Larry David era of the show, which was most of the show.
Yeah.
I think Larry David was with Seinfeld through its 7th season, maybe the 8th season. 7. So there were 2 non-Larry David seasons. The Festivus episode is season 9, I would note. So that was not a Larry David episode, but it's just very good and it all ties together very well.
Yeah, I'm actually a big fan of the season without or the seasons without Larry. Not because he wasn't there. I just think they're really good seasons that stand alone. But I think Larry also came back for the finale.
He did, yeah.
So,
So I'm not picking on the non-Larry David seasons. I'm just noting that. So like the thing is like you've got, if you were to compare the non-Larry David seasons with like the Larry David seasons, there really is a difference in approach. Like
there is, yeah.
when they all go out to the beach, where there's like, again, like George gets caught, the shrinkage episode, which I think is also the episode with like the really ugly baby and the doctor keeps saying breathtaking. Like that's like, obviously played up for effect, but I mean, there are elements of that are just very real.
Mm-hmm.
Someone could walk in on you, and if you've just been in the ocean or, you've just in cold water, we're guys here, that sort of situation happens, and you've seen babies before that everybody's like fawning over and you think that's a really ugly baby. Like that's a real thing. But juxtapose that with like, say, shaving with butter,
Yeah.
or you're taking a bath and you're using butter all over your body and the fat guy down the hall thinks you smell good. Like he wants to eat you. Like it's funny and it makes me laugh, but fundamentally it's different, I think, than like that example episode of like where, you get, shrinkage or whatever.
It definitely came off the rails a bit, but yeah.
Well, I just think they did, even the Festivus thing, I think is a little bit more of like a bombastic kind of a story. Very funny. And like you have a lot of different actors and characters coming together in that episode. Again, like getting the character of Kruger in the room with Frank Costanza is just a funny situation to think about.
Kruger was hilarious, man. I loved him.
I'm trying to think. He had kind of just like this catchphrase where it was sort of a nothing catchphrase, which was just kind of like okay, or it's like it was always just like he didn't really care. Like his company was like going on the toilet, and I was just kind of like, all right, seems good to me, whatever.
There was one episode where like George was having to get all over Kruger to do something that he needed to do to make the business like succeed or whatever.
Yeah,
and he kept catching him like playing hooky, and he was like eating a piece of pie or something at the diner.
Oh yeah, he's like following around town. He's like trying to get him to sign stuff or to do some specific thing.
Yeah.
And if I remember correctly, too, though, it was also because George was trying to get out of something, or he was trying to get something out of it. That's my memory of it.
That sounds appropriate. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's.
Yeah, I could talk about Seinfeld for hours.
Yeah, Seinfeld's a show that probably deserves its own episode in of itself. So
go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, so the Seinfeld reference was mine. Do you have something else?
No, I don't. I was going to talk about Seinfeld more, but I don't want to hold the show up anymore.
If you have something to say, you can say it. We're not.
Well, the Festivus episode. Seinfeld did this thing where they would basically hire new writers constantly.
Yeah,
and they would get their stories and then incorporate those into episodes, and then once they were out of stories, they were fired and they'd hire more writers. So
right.
The Festivus thing is like based on a true story. Like this,
I've heard that. Yeah,
I forget which writer it was, but they were like fascinated by it. Jerry and one of the other producers, but it wasn't quite that extreme. But the airing of grievances, and it was just ridiculous. I forget all the particulars, but yeah, they basically boycotted Christmas and had their own thing like at some random time of the year. It wasn't even around Christmas time. It was like in July or something.
Yeah. I think I vaguely remember that because I have the Seinfeld complete series set.
Mm-hmm.
And like with every episode, it was actually one of the neat features of it. Like with every episode, there was kind of like just a brief little behind the scenes where like they would kind of just talk about the concept of the episode. And I seem to recall that being part of the Festivus thing, is that it's like someone actually had a story where like their parents made up a holiday, and it wasn't, like you say, it wasn't to the extreme that Festivus was, but that's just interesting to think about, that's kind of a real, it's a quasi real thing.
So much of that stuff actually happened, which is
it's all
more
I think
crazy.
every episode there's some basis in reality, like you say, it's like different writers' family stories or something they heard or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think. I'm not going in any particular order. I'm trying to go with what makes sense tonally. So Community had a couple of Christmas episodes. The one I put on my list here, but we could talk about. I think they only had 2 of them. It's worth talking about both. But Abed's Uncontrollable Christmas, which is the one that it's like the whole episode, or most of the episode, is done in stop motion animation.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's kind of like Rankin Bass, Rudolph. And it's kind of if I remember correctly, the story is that Abed is seeing reality like stop motion animation because I think for like the first time his mom had like remarried and she was going to be with like her new family on Christmas. She wouldn't be with him. So he had kind of like a little mental snap or whatever. But that's just a good episode because it actually brought back Professor Duncan, John Oliver, who was all over the first season of the show. And then as the show went on, he kind of was in it less and less. But he kind of came back and like really headlined that episode. And that's just, again, it's kind of a high concept episode, but I thought it was a pretty good episode. And it takes a shot at Lost, if I remember correctly, in like the denouement of the episode. It's something about like when Abed like reaches like the final, they're on like a quest or something, like in his imagination of the stop motion, and at the end of the quest he gets like Lost season 2 on DVD, and he realizes that the symbolism is something about like having too high expectations or unfulfilled promise, or it's something like that. And so it's sort of taking a backhanded shot at Lost.
Yeah, that's actually, since we last recorded, I think I've finally finished Community. I've seen them all now.
Oh, nice. What did you think after seeing the whole series?
And see, how many seasons was it? 6?
6, yeah. The final, so yeah, the first 5 aired on NBC to varying degrees, and then season 6 aired on something that doesn't exist anymore. It was called Yahoo Screen.
Yeah.
Like Yahoo they made like 3 shows before they went out of business. Wow. But yeah, Community's final season was there. That's why in the final episode of Community, Britta can say fuck, and they curse in that episode, which I just think is funny.
Wow, that didn't even occur to me. Yeah. Okay. I feel like when they introduced Keith David and I can't think of the other actress's name.
I know who you mean though. She played Frankie.
Yeah, but damn it, I can't remember her name. But anyway, I think that last season and maybe even some of the season before, I think it definitely showed a decline in quality. Would you agree with that?
You know, I don't know. Like I felt like some of their strongest episodes they made were in some of those periods. Like for whatever reason, I thought Community had a real strength in replacing characters who left. I like after Chevy Chase left and they replaced him with Mike from Breaking Bad.
Sure.
And again, replaced is, again, he wasn't, it's not like he was playing a version of Pierce. He was playing a completely different guy. But that was the thing, is like I actually thought that the show added new characters really well. Like I liked Buzz, I guess was his, if I remember that was his name, like Buzz Hickey. I thought, and it could just be that I like that actor because I like Mike from Breaking Bad. So I'm willing to accept that might be my bias. There's also, I mean, I would say this. I didn't mind those characters, and I sort of liked how even they were sort of a meta commentary, like on the show. Like if you remember,
Mhm.
like Frankie has a scene where she like repeats back to Abed, where she's like, "Wait a second, so your one friend died and became pure energy, and your other friend is on a boat race around the world." Or like basically she just like lists off like where the characters went, and when she says it out loud it just really does sound stupid. um
Well, I just don't like that. It's so obvious that they had to get a straight man in there, to for everyone else to bounce off of, and I don't know. Uh, let's see. I like the character of Leonard a lot,
yes.
and he really had a lot more time than you would expect. But when he was doing his YouTube reviews of potato chips, that was hilarious. Like I wanted to watch that review.
I wanted, like, I'm surprised NBC didn't, like, their media department, they didn't make like digital content of like Leonard's video
Mhm.
reviews. I think didn't he also have reviews of like frozen pizzas
Yeah.
too? I think that
Mhm.
that was one of them. I that was, to me, that's one of the biggest strengths of Community, in that you had your central core cast, but there were other characters on the show that were real characters, and you could make the case like, well, all Leonard ever really did was like stick out his tongue, but he kind of didn't. And like over the course of the series, like there were little drips and drabs of plot that were kind of like revealed. Like it doesn't. I think God, I can't think of the character's name all of a sudden, but Joel McHale's character, he like yells at Leonard. He's like, "Yeah, this is why your son doesn't call you," or something like that. So like there were just little things they would talk about. Um, and even the like kind of Fat Neil. Or no, that's not. Were there two kids Neil? Wasn't Fat Neil the one they played Dungeons and Dragons with? I'm thinking about the really geeky guy. The
Yeah, I
one
know
who's
you're.
ultimately like marrying his cousin in the last season, that episode.
Oh wow, I didn't realize that was his cousin. Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
You didn't remember that episode? That was like the whole big twist of the episode, is that they show up late to the wedding and they're like doing what they always do. They're making it all about themselves.
Yeah.
So they sort of dedicate themselves like, okay, you know what? We've been jerks. We're going to be the best wedding guests ever. And in fact, that's actually one of Keith David's better episodes, where he has like a talking head in the episode where he's like, white people need a lot of encouragement, and especially like if a black man tells them. And so there's just this random scene of him like, this guy's like at the buffet and he's just like grabbing food and he's just like, yeah, you grab that meatball, yeah, you know what you're doing, boy. It's like really stupid, but I don't know, in the moment I thought it was good. But they like, Jeff is like, he's trying to
Yeah,
call
Jeff.
up the grandmother, and they both are like, yeah, grandma, come up. And Jeff's like, oh, well, we need to get your grandmother. It's like, yeah, come up. And then they kind of like, everybody kind of just like sits up and looks around, and it's like they're both pointing at the same grandmother.
Mhm.
And they realize that like they have the same, like they're just cousins.
Oh wow.
They're like
Yeah.
second cousins, or they might even be like, I forget exactly how it breaks out, but like in the course of trying to be better wedding guests, they basically reveal that he just married his cousin. And I don't know. I thought that was a good episode. Like that was, and in fact, that was the over the credits, the writer of the episode basically does like this talking head where he's like, "Hi, I'm whatever. I'm the writer of the Community incest episode. I was told that if I could get this story on air, I would have to explain to you where this idea came from." And he basically just talks about like how he, I don't
Mhm.
know. It was funny.
Yeah, I did like a lot of how self-aware the show was and how much it referenced that.
Yeah.
I think that's a nice thing to add to the show. It's something you don't see that often. Commenting on, after they had moved to Yahoo, commenting on their previous experiences, and
Yeah.
they commented on how Dan Harmon had been gone for a season, and
The gas
uh,
leak season. Yeah.
which I mean, I actually liked that season. Okay, I thought it turned out better than it probably should have.
Yeah, I don't like, because there are people that just like will just talk about that season as like it's complete garbage. I'm like,
Mhm.
I mean, you could kind of tell a difference, and like since I've rewatched the show a few times since then, like there is somewhat of a noticeable difference. But I still enjoyed, and it was actually good enough that there were some elements that Dan Harmon kept. Like Dan Harmon brought Abed's girlfriend into season 5, Captain Marvel. Her name is all of a sudden escaping me.
Oh, yeah.
And I think there were other elements too that he brought from it. I don't know. Yeah, I'm with you. I think that season's fine.
But just a great ensemble cast that is, it's hard to come by, and that's what makes a show like that. I think that's like when Troy left, Donald Glover, and then Shirley left, which Shirley, of course, wasn't ever a very big part of the show anyway, but I feel like Troy was my favorite character. His rapport with Abed is probably my favorite part of the show. So when he left, that's probably another reason why I don't like. He left a few episodes into the 5th season,
and he even made a comment about it because, I think because if I remember correctly, that was the story. Is that so in the 5th season, Jeff had graduated, and the reference that Abed kept making was they're rebooting it. It's like Scrubs season 9.
Yeah.
And Jeff is Zach Braff. Right. And actually, that was why that episode is so good, is that Zach Braff does the ending narration like he used to do on Scrubs. So in the end, you find that but Donald Glover has I think Abed makes the comment, he's like, oh yeah, like Zach Braff. But he only appeared in the first few episodes of season 9, and then he didn't appear until the end.
Yeah.
And then Donald Glover goes, that jerk, after everything Scrubs did for him.
That's funny. On another note, have you seen the show that he went to? I believe it's called Atlanta.
No, I haven't. I haven't caught a lot of FX's newer stuff lately. I haven't even watched It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia in a long, long time. I need to get into it for sure, but I haven't. No.
I need to watch that. And there was a show I liked a lot. It was about the cocaine and crack stuff in the 80s.
Oh yeah.
Forget the name of it, but I think that's season 3. It may have already started, or it's probably going to start sometime soon. But I totally missed all of season 2, so I need to watch that.
Yeah. The other thing I would note about Community is they did have another Christmas episode, which was a simultaneous holiday Christmas episode, but also their Glee episode where they made fun of Glee. And the episode is amazing for the musical number that they give Alison Brie as Annie when she's trying to lure Jeff into being part of the Glee group. They basically dress her up in a sexy Christmas outfit, and her song is nonsense. I think there's a line of there's lyrics that's like boppy boop sex or something like that, bouncing on his lap, on Jeff's lap. But I just like that episode because of the way it just they had been making fun of Glee for the previous couple of seasons, and I like that they kind of just came right out and did kind of their version of why it's annoying.
Mm-hmm. And I agree.
Yes.
Also, I think it's bullshit that the Joel McHale show got canceled on Netflix. I know we haven't done a show in a while, so I just want to go ahead and complain about that.
I was disappointed by that too, because how expensive could that show be? I don't know.
Exactly.
I mean, I guess they're looking at the numbers and just no one was watching it or no one was rewatching it, or I don't know what it is. I was disappointed by that too, because I really liked it. I enjoyed that show immensely. Again, I was always a big fan of The Soup. Mm-hmm. It's I think I joked on Twitter one time, Mystery Science Theater mocks movies, The Soup or the Joel McHale show mocks real life or mocks popular culture.
I love that format, and it's got to be so cheap to do. I mean, they go out of their way to make things more elaborate than they have to be.
Yeah,
it's I don't know if you've ever watched Tosh.0. It's kind of similar. They kind of get lumped into the same group, but
same concept for sure. Yeah,
yeah. But Tosh, I mean, as the show has gone on, it gets more and more elaborate, and obviously their budget's probably gone up a little bit. But it's you don't have to do all that, man. Just tell your jokes. You guys are funny.
I agree. Like I kind of stopped watching it mostly because the videos were getting grosser and grosser and nastier. So I don't watch Tosh regularly anymore, but I had been watching it. But I do agree that the more recent ones that I'll sometimes like just, you know, be flipping channels and I'll watch it. Half the time it's like some elaborate skit he's doing.
Yeah.
Which I don't mind. Again, I think Daniel Tosh is pretty funny, so I don't
Yeah.
mind it in of its, you know, conceptually. But I agree with you. I think the bread and butter of the show is you're making fun of these clips. Like that's
Right.
what you do.
It's
And
like
you know, the
easily
internet has an endless stream of them,
right.
unintended.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, easily a third of the show, probably more than that. Actually, is that the web redemption thing he does?
Yeah.
Which is my least favorite part of the show. So,
So let's see, what do we got here? So I was trying to keep, and again, I sort of broke that rule already, but I was trying to keep, because we haven't talked about The Office yet. Well, so let's save that for last. But for South Park has done a number of Christmas episodes, but in particular, I singled out two of my favorites that I can think of. The first one being an episode. It was the season 6 finale called Red Sleigh Down. I don't know whether you saw that or remember that episode, but basically Santa was trying to deliver presents to Iraq. And terrorists shoot his sleigh down, and they're like holding Santa like hostage and torturing him. And so Stan goes to the only man who can save Santa. He goes and finds Jesus. And so they go to like, so basically like they go on a mission with Jesus up to like over to Baghdad. And they kind of like act out Lethal Weapon. And Jesus is like shooting guys in the head and like stabbing guys in the throat. And there's like a torture scene with Santa that's like word for word the torture scene from Lethal Weapon, where the Asian dude is shocking Mel Gibson. And because Santa, I think, even says the line something like, "Well, it's gonna be a long night because I don't know a fucking thing," and then he's electrocuting him. And then, if I'm not mistaken, in the course of rescuing Santa, Jesus gets shot and killed. So at the end, Santa gives this big speech where he's like, "And so from now on, let us remember on Christmas a man named Jesus." And that's like the whole story is like that, like we're gonna use Christmas to remember Jesus now because he died for us. And then just sort of a side note, unrelated to the Christmas thing. Season 6 of South Park was the first season without Kenny, or sort of without Kenny, because at the end of season 5 they actually killed him. If you remember, the first 5 seasons of South Park, like one of their gimmicks was killing Kenny every episode, and then they decided they were kind of annoyed with that, or they didn't think it was funny anymore, so they like actually killed Kenny. They gave him like cancer or something. Yeah, they like, I forget what it was. They gave him some sickness and he actually died.
Yeah.
And so like that's how Butters became like a more prominent character, is because they were hanging out with Butters and with other characters. But at the end of the episode, like Kenny just like shows up and they're like, "Oh, hey, where you been, man?" And he says something, but like then he just walks off with them, and then Kenny's just back. Like they don't really address it, even though like there was a plot in the episode where like Cartman thought he was making hot chocolate or like chocolate milk, and he accidentally used Kenny's ashes, so he drank Kenny, and like he had like Kenny's soul inside of him, and they were like trying to figure out a way to like get it out. They didn't even like close that story. They just sort of had Kenny all of a sudden just appear, and then he was just in the show from then on.
That's funny.
I covered a lot there. There's a lot to that episode, because I'm pretty sure that episode 2 features Cartman has like this big musical sequence. I think it's like the Poo Choo train. Mr. Hanky comes back and he has like a train made completely of poop, and Cartman's singing a song with him. The other one though that I think is notable is Woodland Critter Christmas. Does that one ring any bells? Do you remember that one? This is an episode that on the face of it, you don't quite know what's going on. There are just these like woodland critters. There's like a little squirrel and a bear, and they seem like these really cute, like woodland animals. And over the course of the episode, it becomes clear that these are like really evil entities who are seeking to bring about like the birth of the Antichrist. and and they like the funny line that I always think of is like at one point they like I forget what it is they do. Like they kill something and they're like ripping it apart and like draping themselves in its blood and they're like, "Oh, blood orgy. Yeah, blood
Yeah.
orgy."
Yeah.
But at
Oh
the
man.
end, it all turns out to be, and it's a spoiler alert, but you know, it sort of all turns out that it's like in school, everybody had to write like a Christmas story, and Cartman had written this elaborate Christmas story about Kyle, like because he's Jewish, like bringing about the birth of the Antichrist with these like evil woodland critters. And so I think that's like how it ends, is like Kyle like yelling at Cartman is like, "That's what this all was. It was all for you to rag on me for being Jewish," or something like that. So that's, I don't know, just those are two again, and there are other Christmas episodes they've done, but those two stand out as just being exceptional South Park episodes that you're sort of like aghast as much as you're laughing the whole time you're watching them.
Man, that's hilarious. Yeah.
Um,
I'd forgotten they did so much Christmas stuff on that show. That's
well, yeah, I
funny.
mean, because like Mr. Hanky was their first
Right.
big Christmas episode about the whole idea of the Mr. Hanky, the Christmas poo.
It's a turd, man. It's a show about a turd.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
And I think I forget they've done other. I think they've even done like other non like Mr. Hanky stuff too. I can't recall, like Woodland Critter Christmas. Mr. Hanky isn't in that.
Right.
But yeah, I just I tried to. I was originally going to just pick Red Sleigh Down, but it just occurred to me that I couldn't. Like Woodland Critter Christmas was just so funny to talk about that I had to include it. Was there anything jog your memory? Anything that coming to mind for you?
Oh, man, I think I'm pretty much tapped out. But you did remind me of the Beavis and Butthead Do Christmas special that they
Okay.
did way back when. Just that was pretty funny if I remember correctly.
Yeah. I think I've only heard of that. I don't think I ever saw that.
Did you ever watch the show at all?
Like intermittently. That
Yeah.
was a show age-wise. I don't think I quite lined up with it the way I could have.
Yeah, I was probably 13, 14, 15, something like that when it was, really doing well.
Yeah.
So it was like right in my age range for the stupid humor.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I was a big fan.
I had friends who watched it. And then again, I've seen it. It is funny. I just, that particular episode I didn't see, and the other, because I think I actually somehow I went to the movie. I think I went with a group of people and I saw like the Beavis and Butthead movie.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But
it's, I don't know how well that stuff holds up. I watched, they did it again. They made new episodes of the show.
Yeah, I remember they brought it back
5-6 years ago, something like that. With Mike Judge came back and did it, and
yeah.
And I didn't watch those until a good friend of mine said, no, they're actually pretty good. What they don't watch music videos anymore because those don't exist anymore. So they watch like reality TV shows, which it's pretty funny. I mean, it's worth it. I think they did like one season.
So before we get to The Office, which we'll use to close us out, I can combine all this into just one thing real quick. I was trying to figure out and again, actually you talked about Beavis and Butthead helps, and from South Park too, because they're animated.
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to think like from any of like the cartoons I had watched, if there were any Christmas episodes that stand out. And the first one that came to mind was Justice League had a Christmas episode that was sort of it kind of broke their formula. Like there wasn't even it wasn't like about like them fighting a bad guy. Like it was just kind of like a day in the life kind of a thing, where the episode was called Comfort and Joy. And if I'm not mistaken, this episode took place right before the big star-crossed like Justice League cartoon movie that kind of ended the original Justice League and then spun into Justice League Unlimited. But it basically is telling 3 stories. It's telling a story of Green Lantern and Hawkgirl are like finally getting together. Like after them, like a romance has been like teased between them, like over the course of the show, and they spend Christmas together. Superman takes the Green Martian home with him for Christmas. So like he takes him to Smallville and introduces him to like his parents, and he spends Christmas with them. And then the Flash, I guess like every Christmas he like visits like all the orphanages in town and does like a special like gift thing for the kids on Christmas. And it's a very nice, you know, I just like it because it's not like, again, it's not like Lex Luthor's like gonna like put acid in all the kids' Christmas presents. There's no like villain. It's just
Right.
this just the characters, like what are they doing on Christmas? And Batman actually doesn't appear. He's referenced. He's like in the Justice League Watchtower. But again, just very good and good like affecting episodes. Like the Green Lantern Hawkgirl thing. It kind of makes it sting even worse when you get to the Star-Crossed thing that happens next, because that's like about the Hawk people coming to Earth and trying to take it over, and you learn she's like been kind of like a secret agent all along. So just some good stuff that brings out. As a segue, I looked into the Batman animated series, and the first appearance of the Joker was actually a Christmas episode in that series. Back in 1992, November, there was an episode called Christmas with the Joker. The Joker breaks out of Arkham, and then he like takes over a TV station, and he's like kidnapped people, and he's like running his own like Christmas special, and like Batman and Robin have to like break in and stop him, and you know it's a pretty good episode because I think like at the end, Batman and Robin and Alfred like sit down and they watch like It's a Wonderful Life, and you know there's just some things that are nice about it. But that would come from the cartoon thing. I think there's probably other cartoons I watched that had them, like maybe the X-Men had like because I have some vague memory of like Wolverine wearing like a Santa hat or something, but nothing that I remembered that well. These episodes I remembered as and liking them quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't remember an X-Men Christmas. I'm sure they did one. I just don't remember it.
I mean, like I distinctly remember everybody being like dressed in like Christmas clothes, like, you know, warm clothes. It's like Christmas time. They were like drinking cocoa and that kind of stuff was going on. Like I think in fact, I even think like Beast was dressed like Santa. Like, so it's like okay. Beast, he's got like the coat and pants and a hat, but it's, you know, he's all blue and hairy.
Yeah, I love the look of Beast in the animated show.
Yeah.
It was really cool looking. That's when I think of Beast, that's the Beast I think of. Not the slender Beast from the movies.
Yeah.
Yeah,
he's got to be like that big, broad shoulder, like an actual beast, right? Yeah, that's how I think of him too.
Fraser Crane as the Beast.
Which, by the way, I always thought was really inspired casting. I always thought he was a great, like, in the movie universe. I don't know why I thought that. I just thought, like, he could portray that character. I don't know why I thought that. I just always thought that was good. So even though, you know, X-Men 3 is anathema and everybody hates it, I always did like this would go to like I'm always pitching Piz on like a concept we should do for the Sausage Factory about what are like bad movies or movies we don't like that have things in them, either plot points or characters or performances that we do really like. So if I were to play that game with X-Men 3, I would say, and there isn't much to like, although you do get a pretty good Rebecca Romijn ass shot when she's turning human. But other than that, I think Kelsey Grammer as Beast is just really good casting. I always liked that.
I think it's good casting, but I don't know. Maybe they could make his body CG and just put his face on there. I mean, he's a pretty old guy, you know, not that big of a guy anyway. Well,
he was also the villain in Transformers 4, if you remember.
Oh, I haven't seen it.
Oh, yeah. Well, he was, like
first 2, I think.
Yeah, he did a turn in like the 2000s period where like he was like playing villains. Because if you remember, he was also the star of that show on Starz, Boss. Where he's like the Chicago mayor.
Oh, really? I never saw that.
It only ran, I think, 2 seasons. But it actually, I have no idea why Stars canceled it. I thought it did pretty well. Like it seemed like it was critically acclaimed and everyone liked it. But yeah, they only did 2 seasons. But like, yeah, it was like he was like the mayor of Chicago and was like doing some underhanded things and bad stuff. And I think in the first episode, like someone sends him an ear in the mail, and he just
Oh,
like
wow.
puts it down like the garbage disposal. Like I just have this vision in my head of him like pushing it down with like a spoon and like turning the disposal on and like
I don't
whatever.
think Stars had very much success with their original programming, have they?
I think they have now with Outlander. I think
Okay.
Outlander and Black Sails have done better for them. Like because Outlander's in like season 4, and I think that show actually gets good press.
Okay.
There was a show that just came on starring I can't think of the farmer's insurance guy who
Oh, yeah.
was J. Jonah Jameson in the previous live action movies. I can't think of his damn name.
Um, the Schillinger from
Yeah,
Oz.
Schillinger. Yeah, right. Schillinger from Oz. Again, I can't think of the
Um,
actor's name, but him.
it's like two letters, like something something in his last name.
Oh
Um,
God, that's gonna kill
yeah.
me. I could
Uh,
just look it up, but
Come on,
um,
we can do it.
he well, in any case, he has a new show on Stars that I think is entering its second season. That's kind of like about like like parallel universes where it's like
Oh,
in our universe he's just some guy who's just kind of like an analyst or something for some company, but in a parallel universe he's like a CIA agent who kills people or something. I could be entirely misstating the plot, but that's the story is basically around like there's our Earth and then there's another Earth. It's kind of like a version of like Fringe, kind of like focused purely on that aspect of like the parallel universe stuff.
is it J.K. Simmons?
J.K. Simmons, there you go. That's it. Yeah, him. He stars in that show I'm referencing, and I can't think of the name of it either.
Is it Power? Is that the name of it? So I
No.
think they have a show called Power. Okay, I just know the stuff they always push when you watch content on there.
Yeah. It's not Power. I can't remember what it's called.
I know what you're talking about. I've seen the previews of it. I may have to watch that. That sounds interesting. Of course,
I
he's
mean,
always
that show
great.
got good press. Um, but yeah, Outlander, I think, is probably their big hit. Black Sails. I don't know. I think Black Sails is in like its second or third season too. Like that show must be doing okay. So
Have you seen either?
I've seen pictures of nudity from the shows on the internet
So
from
yeah, I
time
mean,
to time, but otherwise I haven't actually. Well, and again, like it's there's nothing about those shows that like makes me want to subscribe to Stars, I guess.
right.
So for me, I think if you're like a fan of the Outlander books from Diana Garibaldi, I'm sorry, I'm butchering your name, but I think it's Diana. The first name I've got right. I think if you're like a fan of those books, you probably dig the show, and maybe other people do. I do remember Outlander was trying to be like when it was first pitched, it was kind of like a more romantic Game of Thrones.
Okay.
It was like a Game of Thrones for women or something, is kind of how it was described. But like when you really look at like the plot of it and what it is, like it's really nothing like Game of Thrones at all. Like
Mhm.
that, I don't know how that tagline got mixed
That's
in.
how it was pitched. It's
Yeah.
like Game of Thrones, but that's how all the pitch meetings go now.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, that's how you have to describe things to some of these stooges. It's like
oh,
they just,
absolutely.
what do they know? Yeah.
You got to
Well, anyway,
reference
I think,
something they know does well.
well, exactly. That's it. It's like, this is, so, this thing that makes a lot of money and people are always talking about? It's like that.
This is
But
Die Hard on a train.
yeah.
This is Die Hard on a bus.
Yes. But to bring things to a close, I think we can start talking about the Office Christmas episodes. And so, to my mind, and I did have kind of a tough time. Like I said, I made a rule for myself since The Office had 9 seasons and 7 Christmas episodes. I wanted to force myself to pick my favorite, and it was tough.
Yeah.
At first I thought this would be self-evident, but So I'll come. I won't tease it. The episode I picked was A Benihana Christmas. That was the 3rd season Christmas episode. It was an hour long, and it featured a number of elements there. So it's a Benihana Christmas because part of the episode is spent. Michael has broken up, or rather, he was broken up with by Carol, the realtor. And so to make him feel better, Andy takes him to Benihana, and he drags Jim and Dwight along. And Dwight can't sit with them. He gets stuck like opposite this like random couple in the middle of their table.
I can relate to that because I hate the seating arrangements in those type of restaurants because you can't ever talk to people that you're with. Like, hey, what's going on over there?
Right. Exactly right. But then, like, the reason I like that episode is that. So let me take one step back. I was originally going to select the season 2 episode Christmas Party, which was the first one and is very funny and has lots of elements that I quite like. Like there's actually a line read that John Krasinski has where, if you remember the story, Jim finally gets Pam in Secret Santa. And this is actually something that comes to play back in the final season of the show where he like writes her that letter where he's going to finally tell her how he feels. But he gets her a teapot because she likes tea and there's all these little gifts inside it. But then it goes to Dwight. And then Dwight is talking about using it as kind of like a neti pot.
Yeah.
And like where he's like putting the thing in his nose. And so there's a talking head with Jim where he's like, to think my gift for Pam will be used for that. Like, and like that, like the way I can't even do it justice, but the way he says it and he looks so pissed off. Like, I don't know. I just, my wife and I always laugh at that.
It's the one he bought like Ryan, like a really expensive iPod or something.
That was the other story is that Michael bought Ryan an iPod.
Which that tells you how old it is.
Yeah, right. There was supposed to be a $20 limit. And then it brought some other plot threads to the fore because Michael got a bonus for firing Devin earlier in the season. So Michael had extra money, and then he has like a crush on Ryan, so he bought him the iPod. And then like everybody just wants the iPod, and
it turned from Secret Santa to, I guess, Dirty Santa. Is that what you call it?
It was Dirty Santa or White. I forget. There was White Elephant. I think there was a few things like because that's how Michael got the idea. Like Michael looked up White Elephant, and then I think Jim is like, I think that's called Dirty Christmas or whatever. But
no, I want the iPod. I don't want this pot. This teapot.
Right, and that's actually what happened. Is I think Pam ended up with the iPod. And, well, I mean, again, she eventually did get the pot. That's that spoiler alert there, but. She got that's why she couldn't like say no because it was the iPod.
Didn't she somehow get some wind of how important it was to Jim that she got the pot?
I don't remember how she got wind of it. In fact, I don't know that she did. I think just over the course of the episode, if I remember correctly, Jim was like trying to convince her that like he really got that for her, and then I think like she surprises him at the end by saying like, "Hey, look what I have."
Right.
And then he like walks her through the gifts, and then he sneaks the card away from it too. Right. The reason why I didn't pick that as my favorite, even though it's clearly very funny and we're talking a lot about it, for the season 3 one, I just felt like there were so many storylines and all of the characters really got something to do that was funny and interesting and engaging that I just felt like we've definitely had this discussion before that to me, the pinnacle of The Office was never as good as it was in season 3. There isn't a bad episode of The Office season 3. Everyone's firing on all cylinders. And you can even just see it. Like if you ever watch like the blooper reel, it seems to me like they're barely able to get through any scene of like any episode. Like they're always laughing at what they're doing. But so in that episode, there was the Benihana plot. But then back at the office, Pam and Karen, who had been kind of awkward and estranged because of the whole Jim angle, like have come together and are challenging Angela's dominance of party planning, and they create their own party, which starts like 15 minutes before Angela's party and is like in a different part of the office. And then like
That's
Angela
alcohol.
has her party, which is this very somber occasion. Like Dwight's like just standing over her with his hands behind his back. And I don't know. And then like when they come back from Benihana, like Michael and Andy have brought like two of the Benihana waitresses,
Yeah.
and Michael can't remember which one is because they're Asian. He thinks they look alike. He can't tell which was the girl he brought. And I feel like there's some other stuff like Kevin. Oh, like Kevin's like singing karaoke, and he has just like a funny part there.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there's a thing that my wife and I quote Office at each other a lot, but I'm pretty sure Kelly's karaoke song is "We Belong" by whatchamacallit, you know that song? It's like "We Belong." I think it's Pat Benatar.
Is it okay?
I think that's. But the way she ends the song is like "We belong, Ryan." She's like adding Ryan's name to it. I don't know. Again, I'm probably forgetting something. There's like other stuff.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what the other cast members are doing, but yeah, it's all those Christmas episodes are great to me.
You know, see, this is where we're going to get into the age-old debate that we have. I don't like the season 8 Christmas episode, the one with Robert California, where Aaron gets like really drunk.
That's what I was gonna say. Yeah, I was about to bring that up. Yeah,
that episode just makes me uncomfortable, and not in the good, funny way that like early Office episodes made me uncomfortable.
mm-hmm.
Like it's just not funny uncomfortable, and there's just like really awkward stuff going on because there's the whole Aaron, Andy, and Andy's girlfriend Jessica.
Oh right.
And like Aaron is like getting really drunk and like acting really strange. There came a point, and this actually happened while Michael was still on the show, where like Aaron was this kind of intriguing, cute character who was definitely a little bit strange, but like where they sort of took her to a place that was just very odd. Like when they introduced like her home life, and she's like living with her he's not her stepbrother, like he was like her brother, like in an orphanage or whatever.
Yeah, adopted.
And he's her adopted brother, like, and he's like clearly like macking on her.
Yeah.
And she's like acting like kind of like all goofy and like a little kid with him.
Yeah.
And they just did some other stuff. And like that Christmas episode, like she's doing stuff like that there, where she's like drinking a lot, and she like comes up behind like Andy and his girlfriend and like says like really weird things. Mm. I don't know. That episode, I don't like that episode, like really at all. That would fall into my, I would probably skip it if I'm watching season 8 again, plan, which is what I do typically.
Yeah, real quick. I think a lot of us on the Sausage Factory are fans of The Office, and mm-hmm. I've always talked to Cole. I was like, you'll probably like it. It's a good show. And he finally got around to watching it. He's like, yeah, I'm a fan of the UK Office, so I'll check it out.
Nice.
And he had a real odd reaction to it. Like it was the opposite of what I was expecting. He watched like the first 3 seasons, and I was like, if you make it through season 3 and you're still not into it, just give up.
Yeah.
And he did. And he's like, I just wasn't into it. But he went back and watched like the last season, and he was like, oh, it was amazing how much better the last season was than those early seasons I watched.
Better than season 3? Oh my God.
You'd say season 3 is probably the best, right?
I do. Yeah, I say it unequivocally. I would stand by that.
But I'm also kind of like, whatever episode I'm watching right now is the best. I'm a huge fan of that show.
Don't get me wrong. Like I laugh at just about, again, barring season 8 and part of 9, I laughed at just about any episode I'm watching.
Mm-hmm.
I just think I've seen The Office several times now.
Right.
I can still watch season 3 episodes, and even knowing the jokes are coming, yeah, I still laugh as hard as I ever did watching it. Like it's just so funny. The writing, the performing, everything about that season just works to me.
Oh man, I was watching the Chili's episode with Tim Meadows.
Yes.
And I had just gotten dinner and I was sitting down. My wife was trying to go to sleep, and she was like, "You've seen that episode like 10 times, and you're laughing your ass off at it. It's so loud. It's great. It's a good episode." You know, she was just amazed that I was laughing so hard at something I'd seen so many times before.
And I do like episodes like that subvert your expectations on a number of things. One, the fact that Tim Meadows would even be interested in what Michael's doing and be kind of goofy like he is. But that episode to me, I like because I know that Michael's like a bad manager and he does stupid things, but I do like the episodes that sort of highlight, and it's never ever like specifically called out. It's always like little bits of other episodes, but like that Michael really was an amazing salesman.
Yes.
And that Michael, even though he does act strangely, like there's a reason why he does some of the things he does. And that like that episode is a good example where everything he was doing was all about making this guy really comfortable, trying to get him talking, trying to get him to open up to them so that they could have a conversation with him rather than like a business conversation. And you know, the show kind of, again, there's other episodes that sort of highlight that aspect of Michael too, but I like that. I like that Michael is always highlighted as, you know, a good salesman, if not a good manager.
Well, he's a jerk and, insensitive, everything else. But at the root of it, he is a great salesman. And that episode shows it because there's a couple of times or a time or two when Jan is about to go in for a proposal or something. And he's like, he stops her.
Right.
He says, hold it, I got this. And then he comes in at the end and, okay, but you're gonna have to come down a little bit, and meet me in the middle or whatever. And they get the contract.
Yeah.
I think once Jan figures out what's going on, I think that's why she's like super attracted to him at the end, because he is a very good salesman. And it is nice to see that, that he's not a complete idiot.
Well, I feel like the story with Michael is, it's not that, idiots get made manager. It's that people who are good at their regular job get made managers. But just because you're good at the job you might do in like an individual contributor role doesn't mean you'd be good at managing people. And so like that's Michael. It's like Michael was a really good salesman, but that doesn't mean he should manage salesmen. But then again, what do I know? Because when you think about how the story takes shape and the way like the episodes progress, Dunder Mifflin Scranton becomes like the most profitable branch. Like Michael's sales team is always like they're doing so well. They're handling just at various points. Remember, that's why in season 5 he does the the speaking tour.
Right.
It's like because David Wallace doesn't know what he's doing, but it's like something he's doing is working, so he just tries to send him around to talk to people. And I sort of like that it's never quite clear what he's doing that's working, because he's like a buffoon, but it's I don't know if it's just he's not a hard ass or I don't know.
I like that his arch nemesis at the other branch, Josh, yeah. They initially think the Scranton branch is going to be the one that gets shut down, but Josh turns the tables and he's accepted a job somewhere else, and basically screws him over to make more money at this other place. And then he, intercepts all of the employees from that branch. Yeah. Michael does. So it's funny how it works like that.
And I do like sometimes some of the intercompany stuff that you catch wind about, because I think it's in season 4 when Michael's when Stanley announces that he's going to leave, and he's going to go to Karen's branch, and then Michael tries to poach. Michael tries to poach their top salesman. He's like talking to a guy on the phone. He's like, I heard Scranton was the worst. Like, didn't Stanford quit like on the first day? And then they's like, I hear it's worse than Camden. And I just like all this like inside company stuff that like we have no, as the audience, like we have no reference for, but just that there is this conversation that goes on among like other company members about like what different branches do and who's there. I don't know. I find that like under the surface storytelling, like the stuff that's not on the page necessarily, I just always find those little details funny to me.
Yeah, they all have the little mustaches on.
Yeah.
And Karen finds Jim in the hiding in the car, I think, or somewhere.
Yes. Well, that's a good example too, because you find out in that episode like all of the receptionists at the various branches like all kind of keep in touch.
Yeah.
Because Pam seems to know Ronaldo. Like if you remember, because like later on when they come back, like Pam's like, yeah, Ronaldo told me. And it's sort of like, why would he just call Pam up? So it's like there's some network of like the receptionists at all the different Dunder Mifflin branches, and they all talk. And, you know, this is now a rumor that Michael and Dwight broke Utica's printer or whatever. I forget what they did, but yeah. I'm trying to think, like, because I was trying to like line up all of the like. There's the season. So season 4 didn't have one. Season 5, I couldn't remember if that was the. Oh, you know what season 5 was? Because keeping them in order, season 5 was the Moroccan Christmas, because that was the one that Phyllis did because she was blackmailing Angela. But I think that was also simultaneously, wasn't the one where Meredith's hair got lit on fire and like Michael tried to just put her in rehab? He like wrestled her into the building and tried to take her to rehab.
That was Christmas. Yeah. I was thinking about the one where Phyllis wanted to be Santa Claus.
I think, is that the fun? Yeah. Okay. So that would be season 6 then. That's that one.
Okay.
Because season 7, which is Michael's final one, is Classy Christmas, where he had like the traditional party plan, but then when it was revealed that because Toby was doing the Strangler trial, Holly would be coming back, he like scuttled the whole party and like waited to throw the party. And so like it messed everything. I remember it messed certain things up because Daryl was like having problems with his daughter and she wanted to see Santa, and like Michael's version of Santa was like he's like wearing like a smoking jacket and a cap. He doesn't have like a beard or anything. Yes, yeah, those are. See, like I can talk about, like, just talking about those makes me smile. Like I think about the season 8 Christmas party and like I want to, like, I'm getting angry thinking about it.
I'll tell you what, I'll watch it again tonight and I'll see how I feel.
Season 9's Christmas party, again, while not my favorite, probably not even top 3, is good because that's the that's like the Dwight Christmas or whatever it's called.
Oh,
it may not be what it's called, but that's with like Belschnickel. Is that his name? Like the Dutch Santa that like has like a switch.
That was the Christmas present to Jim.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. It was basically like they were all going to decide what to do. And Dwight makes that suggestion, and Jim's like, "Oh my God, yes, yes!" And then Pam, because they were fighting,
right?
She like pushes hard to get to do that version. And actually, one thing that I do remember being kind of funny is that like when they're looking up what it is, like, because I think they were sort of assuming Dwight was just making it up, but then I think Oscar like looks it up. He's like, "Oh no, this is real." And then as he's like reading the description, like Belschnickel has like a black-faced midget helper or something. And Dwight's like, guys, of course we don't do that. And like he gets on the phone real quick and you see Mose, he's walking in blackface in this really outlandish, colorful outfit. And he has to turn around and leave.
So yeah, the 86, the blackface.
Yeah. That is a good one. And again, that if the non-Michael seasons had been more stuff like that, I think I might have appreciated the show more. Like it really bothers me that they couldn't have just made Dwight the manager. Like I honestly think they would have gotten so much. Like I wonder if they think that Dwight being the manager would have gotten old, or that they wouldn't be able to get much story out of it. I just don't think that's true. Like, I really think they could have made that work. And I ultimately think those seasons would have been better for it if they had.
You may be right, but I think it's more fun to see him not able to attain something he wants so badly, because that's always been his dream, is to be manager, and he can never. Well, the one day he was manager, he like a gun went off in the office.
Right.
His one day. So.
Well, that's what I mean. Is it could have been like an escalating series of like. Those final 2 seasons have like some really outlandish, like the whole Robert California thing. And again, that character actually does make me really laugh sometimes. He does. But I just feel like if you could ever call out to like a jump the shark moment, it's just really some of the stuff with him. And just some of that like odd story where he's like, I mean, at the end, isn't he like not actually Robert California? Like he has like a different, it's like Bob Calamakis or something. And then he's like going to go to Europe and like train like underage gymnasts or I mean, just like listen to that. I mean, I don't know. I almost like to pretend that season didn't really happen. That like,
he's the Lizard King.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And now that's, that actually is kind of a funny line in context of like what's going on. But I also didn't like how that, like they ruined, again, I don't want to re-legislate this stuff, but they ruined Andy. They ruined the Andy and Aaron romance. And there was no reason to do that. The only reason they did it, I am convinced. I've never seen this, again, the writers never have like spoken about this, but I am convinced that the writers said, well, we already did Jim and Pam. So even though these 2 actors have amazing chemistry and are really funny together, we can't have them get together too. And so what they ultimately did just made it seem less organic than what the story and the performances of the actors were leading them to do, which would have been Andy and Aaron should have been together. They should have been in a relationship. Like that would have been funny.
Well, they wanted to get together so badly for so many years. They finally do. And he treats her like shit. He leaves and goes on his little vacation.
And that drives me nuts too, because it's like Andy didn't seem like that wasn't the Andy character that developed.
I agree.
That I think is what pissed me off more than anything, is that like Andy wanted to be with Aaron. He seemed to really love her and want to be with her. And then he finally could be with her, and then he just kind of treats her like crap. Like that just didn't seem like, especially after the way he like courted Angela. Like there was like really sweet stuff that Andy did, like singing, like getting his friends to like sing to her, to like ask her out on a date. But he was like fawning over her, like over their wedding and some of the other things. Like that's funny Andy. Like that's the sort of Andy that if he was with someone who was actually nice to him, like Aaron, like would have been really interesting to see. I don't know.
Maybe the fact that he couldn't be there for a large part of the season played into how they had to write that. Because he was filming the Hangover sequels, whatever it was.
Yeah.
So I mean, Ed Helms couldn't actually be there, physically to shoot the scene. So, who knows? They probably saw the light at the end of the tunnel. They knew that the show was getting near the end of the run anyway. So, who knows?
Oh, I think it was clear to them. I'm pretty sure that when they started season 9, it was clear it was the last season. Because if I remember correctly, when season 8 ended, they didn't have contracts for Jim, Pam, or Andy. And there might have been someone else too, but like those were the big 3 basically. Well, Dwight too, but I guess for whatever reason Dwight did have a contract. But and so when they like negotiated to get them, I'm pretty sure that was done with the intent that's like, okay, just come back, let's work this out, let's do one great final season. Because I even heard, I forget if it was an audio commentary or an interview, but the showrunner, whose name escapes me, I can usually think of his name, was kind of talking about how like, season 9 done knowing it was the end was done differently than like it might have been done if it was just season 9, and there could have been more seasons. And that just, I remember hearing that and it just kind of annoyed me because it's like, well, that was the problem with season 8. Like you just sort of treaded water. Like you weren't trying to like accomplish anything or move these characters ahead. You were just like, at that point, it's like you think you're just making a sitcom. Part of why I always like The Office or why I do like The Office, it always feels like the story's moving forward. Like think about it. Season 1, you meet everybody. There's this sort of looming threat of, that a branch is going to get shut down, that there's going to be layoffs, those kinds of things. Mm-hmm. Then season 2, the Jim Pam romance, which again was in season 1, but really kind of lights up and escalates, and more company talk about, the company's going to go under. Michael starts his romance with Jan. Then in season 3, like the big company, like the big like branch shutdown actually happens. Jim has left. It just feels like every season evolved and new things were happening. When you get to season 8, though, like what happens in season 8 of consequence? Because when you really think about it, by the end of season 8, they've like hit a reset button and David Wallace owns the company again. Robert California is leaving. Andy's the manager again. And it's just sort of like they just sort of undid a bunch of the things they had done, which were bad ideas anyway. But I mean, I don't know. It just sort of tasks me. It bugs me.
I agree with that. I think season 8 is definitely probably the weakest season. Season 9, though, I think is a really good season.
I do. Again, there are things about it. I've never like sat down and like tried to really rank the seasons. But I have to imagine that in any ranking that I would do, season 9 would probably just be above season 8. Because any Michael Scott season to me is going to trump a non-Michael Scott season. Like as good as season 9 is, and you're right, it's pretty good. I would still probably put it under season 7.
I just think that the quality of season 9 speaks to how great that cast was, that they were able to pull it off without Steve Carell, and the fact that they even wanted to do it without Steve Carell. Which, I mean, they may not have had any choice that season 8, but like you said, they signed on again for another season. I mean, I would have liked to have seen 2 or 3 more seasons as good as season 9 if they could have done it, but who knows? You've got a combination of, all of these people are getting pretty famous. They're getting jobs left and right, other work. They're probably getting tired of The Office. They're getting bad reviews. And, they feel like they should go out while they're ahead rather than get canceled, so.
Yeah. I don't think that's a situation where I don't think NBC, unless the ratings went completely in the toilet, and maybe they could have, but The Office was still pulling in really good numbers. And I would have a feeling that NBC probably wanted more seasons of The Office. Greg Daniels, that's his name.
Okay.
That's the EP. I think, or showrunner, EP, whatever. I'm willing to bet he probably. Well, there's probably a couple problems. One, the actors were probably getting expensive. I mean, to your point, Ed Helms disappeared because he was making The Hangover, and his movie career was really taking off. Jim's movie career, by the way, was actually really taking off. Like, I think. No, he did that after The Office. Because I was thinking he did the Benghazi thing after The Office, I thought. But even so, he'd been in some movies, and he definitely seemed like his star was on the rise. Even Rainn Wilson had done some movies. Some of the other characters, appear in some other things. But I think it was just getting probably expensive for NBC to keep that cast together. And so I wouldn't be surprised if Greg Daniels probably said like, "Hey, guys, please come back. Let's do one good final season." And maybe even talk to them like, how many do you think you got in you? And they may have been the ones that said to him, maybe 1. It's funny. Like, I don't know. Cause it's like, you hear John Krasinski and, cause how they've been talking about like bringing The Office back in some capacity.
I hope they don't.
I'm pretty sure. I don't know how I feel about it.
I hope they don't.
I think John Krasinski had made the comment, which maybe subverts what I'm trying to say, but I think he made the comment that, when The Office ended, he's like, we all still really loved working together. It's not like we were like, oh my God, like get me off
Right.
this show. He's like, we were having just as much fun as we ever did, like coming to work and having a great time. Like, so like, it was good to go out on a high note, but like, it's not like we hate each other. It's like, we really liked being together. And so he's like, I think he was kind of saying like, so if they wanted to do like a reunion or something, like he was basically saying like, I'm all for it. The reason I'm not for it is for the same reason I'm so critical of the final episode of The Office. If Steve Carell's not going to be a part of it, don't do it. Because like I'm tired of this, like trying to piece together a show without Steve Carell in a way that makes sense to the story. Because they already played that card once, where Michael Scott just sort of kind of cameoed in the finale, which didn't make any sense for his character in terms of the way that he was always mugging for the camera and making himself the center of attention. And all the other complaints I've made. I think we've only had a few episodes of this show, but I'm pretty sure I've complained about this on another episode.
And I disagree with all of that.
I know you do, but
I just wanted to point that out.
I know you do. This is why again, if we were both saying the same thing, this wouldn't be an interesting
That's
show.
a touching episode, man. That's a great episode.
So like, again, it's like, I'm not saying that episode is garbage. It's actually a quite affecting finale. I keep saying that word, affecting. I need to come up with a new term. It's a touching finale. There's a lot, again, the final, like the song that Creed sings at the end is fantastic. I think the line from Andy about how I wish you could know you're in the good times when you're having them.
Yes.
Or like you're in the good old days when you're in them or something. Like I remember that line struck me particularly hard when I saw that episode, because I was like in the midst of some transition with like work and some things in my life that I was just like,
it's so true. I mean, it's like we should all take that to heart.
Yeah.
Because appreciate the moment now rather than in the future.
And, there's stuff with like the Jim and Dwight that were really funny and great in that episode, but it's just like, again, I know the behind the scenes story, and I'm not like blaming the producers for that. It's Steve Carell. I'm picking on Steve Carell.
Sure.
So don't take this as me saying, oh, hey, Office, your last episode was bad, or I'm hating on it because of this one thing. They did what they could with what they had. I'm just making the point. If the final episode was being true to the characters, and particularly the character of Michael Scott, he would have been in the Q&A session that they were. Freaking David Wallace was in the Q&A session. He wasn't even on the show for like 2 seasons.
Yeah.
And Pete and what's his face were there. Like, I mean, and again, I like this is not me picking on those characters. I like those characters. I actually thought Pete and
Plop and Dwight Jr.
Yeah, Plop and Dwight Jr. I actually thought they were funny characters. I thought they added a lot to the show. They were good. They were good additions in the final season. I liked them. But my point is, why wasn't Michael there? And that we only get like one brief talking head from Michael at the wedding. Again, it just, Steve Carell annoys the hell out of me.
I agree.
And he's already been out there making comments like, they shouldn't do it. I don't want to do it. And it's like, well, let's not force him. But I just don't think if he's not going to do it, that you should do it. I just don't.
I feel like, forget that guy. He thinks it's his show. They don't want him to do that show without him. And they did it, and it was funny, and it was good without him. So he can go off and make his Oscar fodder and not win an Oscar every year and stand in line and, cry on screen, whatever he needs to do. Him and Will Smith and Jim Carrey can all do that all together every year and not win an Oscar. I don't know. It's, I could totally understand why he did it. He probably had an agent in his ear saying, you're going to get typecast. You're going to get typecast. You got to get off this show. Is what I imagine may have been happening.
Did you ever maybe not, but so before Norm Macdonald got his Netflix show, he had on YouTube kind of a show. He was sort of, I found out after the fact, he was basically doing it for free, or he was kind of doing it to sort of like, raise his profile because he really wanted to do like an interview show, kind of like what he now has on Netflix. He had an episode of that show with Jerry Seinfeld. It's actually a very good episode.
Oh, cool. I need to watch that.
And, Norm's show was, I actually thought Norm Macdonald is actually a really good interviewer. Like, because on the one hand, he'd be really kind of funny and goofy and just tell stupid jokes and sort of like say provocative things to get a reaction out of people. But he also would have some really interesting conversations. And when he had Jerry Seinfeld on, they had a conversation about like this thing we're talking about here. The folks like, well, not specifically like Jim Carrey and Steve Carell. I don't think Steve Carell ever did stand up. I think Jim Carrey did, but
I think it was like improv. I think was Steve Carell's thing.
Yeah. And actually, I think Steve Carell also did. Yeah, he did. I think he was on that show with Stephen Colbert.
Yep.
That show from the '90s, the
Dana
one,
Carvey.
Dana Carvey show. Is that what that was? Whatever. It only went like a season, but in any case, they were basically just making the argument. You know, Jerry said it, but Norm absolutely agreed. Where he's like, you know, I'm paraphrasing, but they were kind of like, you know, anybody can do drama. You know, anybody can be just kind of like an actor or a dramatic actor.
Sure.
Not everybody can make you laugh. Not everybody has that gift to like delight you. And so they were kind of criticizing, you know, actors and comedians who kind of get away from comedy and they go and do these like dramatic serious roles. And again, I don't believe that they name checked like Jim Carrey or Robin Williams or whatchamacallit, Steve Carell. Again, we were just talking about him. Like they didn't call them out by name, but I mean, as they were having this conversation,
you probably knew who they were talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of thought like that was what they were referencing, and I like I really took that to heart because I believe that's true. And like to your point, like I can't at this point, like I can't stand Jim Carrey. He just annoys me for a whole host of reasons at this point, but it's like, dude, you made your career like talking out of your ass with a funny voice. Like, let's be honest about it. Like, that's where your career started. And I'm not saying you need to do the same kinds of movies, like the same kinds of comedies over and over again. I mean, you don't need to do that. That's fair. But like, I do not want to watch some like dramatic. Like, again, the show he's got on Showtime now. He's like some friggin' like Mr. Rogers analog, and it's like some deep melodramatic drama stupid thing. Like that's not why I watch Jim Carrey. Like if I want to watch like some deep affecting drama, I'm gonna watch I'll watch Robert De Niro, I'll watch Tom Hanks. I don't watch Jim Carrey for what is it, the Secrets of the Spotless Mind or whatever the hell that stupid thing. I don't watch him for that. And the same thing for Steve Carell. It's like I'm not. That Marwen movie may be perfectly good. I don't know. Seems kind of silly to me, but
it does.
I'm not like going to go tune into it. Think about like Marquee, right? Like Tom Cruise, it seems to me, for all the criticisms we could have of Tom Cruise and his personal life, Tom Cruise seems to have figured out who he is as an actor, like what his niche is.
Right.
Like, I'm the guy who's going to go jump out of a plane and land on a tank and drop a grenade and jump away from the explosion and then go beat up those 6 guys over there and then fly a jet away. Like, that's me. And I figured it out. And like, does Tom Cruise do other roles? Yeah, kind of he does. But like, he figured it out. Like, I'm not looking for Steve Carell to like go and do some great dramatic role. That's just... So I'm sorry, you and I are saying the same things, but it's like that really does annoy me too. I'll get off my soapbox now.
It's even more annoying when it's so obvious what you're trying to do, and I don't know. I don't want to. I could talk about that some more, but yeah. Really no reason
I don't want to end on a bitter note. I was actually feeling pretty good because actually, well, again, sort of like the final thing, the Office Christmas episodes generally I thought were really, really good. I mean, the Office was actually pretty good about doing. They didn't do a Halloween episode every year, but they usually did pretty funny ones. They had that one Valentine's Day episode. I think they had more than one Valentine's Day episode, or didn't they? I just remember one where, like, where Jim and Pam went out to lunch with Phyllis and Bob Vance of Vance Refrigeration,
gosh, yes.
And they're like having sex in the bathroom while like Jim and Pam are like waiting to eat. Meanwhile, like Michael at the office is like putting together a Lonely Hearts like dating event or something, so that he can find the girl he met in like the blood donation truck or whatever.
Right. And I think Kelly is it's like her first Valentine's to not be single.
Yes.
She's actually with Ryan on Valentine's.
In fact, actually, that might be. See, this is why when The Office was good, it was good, because I'm pretty sure Michael asks a question where he's like, "Okay, who here in the office is single?" And I'm pretty sure, like, as it pans over everybody, Ryan has his hand.
Yeah. You're right.
So, and I like how he's doing that, and like, and Kelly's just like holding on to him with like this big smile. But that's and then I think Michael's. Now, see that I feel like that's a different thing, because I have this memory of Michael saying to like Jim and Pam, he's like, guys, listen, like there's just this generally between the two of you, just this kind of romantic, flirty. It's just too much. And Jim's like, oh, I'm sorry, I thought we were being really, really respectful. And Michael's like, listen, if you're not going to let us be a part of what's happening, and Pam's like, Michael, I've told you, you cannot be part of our relationship. And then it basically culminates with like Michael saying to them, it's like, okay, all right, Jim and Pam, everyone in the office invites you to suck it. And then like they go and do, so I forget. I'm paraphrasing that scene very badly. But that's, again, The Office did holiday episodes pretty well, I think.
I think they went to lunch on Valentine's Day and drank too much too, Jim and Pam. And
Was that Valentine's Day or just a lunch they went out and drank too much?
You may be right. I don't know. But wound up having sex in the closet, I think.
Well, that was part. Well, see, so that was. You know what? That might have been a second Valentine's Day episode. You might have uncovered it, because the reason they did, or what else was happening, was when Michael and Holly were back together. The episode was called PDA.
Yeah.
And they were like hugging and touching each other and like sitting on each other in meetings. Oh. And at a certain point, like during one of the meetings, they were just talking about how like everybody's had sex in the office, like, and they started like naming all the characters. And Jim and Pam hadn't.
Right.
And then they go out to lunch and like get drunk, and then it kind of becomes this thing where like they actually kind of start trying to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they eventually do, but yeah, so I'm sorry. Yes.
They eventually play it off. They're like, we don't need to do that. That's stupid.
Yeah.
And then I think it eats at them throughout the day, and they eventually do wind up doing that.
Yeah, and then they kind of still are saying they didn't do it, but then like in the final talking head, I think they just kind of smile at the cameraman. Yeah. No, that's good. I don't know. We've covered a lot of ground. Yeah. I don't think, I'm just checking my list. Like I've covered every episode that was on my list. I mean, and again, just to be fair, I mean, there could be older people out there, or just people who look deeper into TV history. I mean, I'm sure, All in the Family had Christmas episodes, Dick Van Dyke. I mean, you could get into some really old TV where they were doing Christmas episodes. I mean, heck, even there are again, you brought up Friends. I didn't mention Friends, but I'm sure there's other series out there. When I was doing some of my research, I mean, I saw stuff like Malcolm in the Middle had like a Christmas episode. That's not a show I really followed, but they had Christmas episodes out there. One episode I almost included was Mad Men had a particularly good Christmas episode where like Don and Joan spent some time together like at the bar, and were really kind of like sort of flirty with one another, but it was just an interesting take, because it was made clear in that episode that Don and Joan had like never gotten together. And it kind of became clear that like Don, as much as he respected anybody, like kind of respected Joan. And so I don't think like he would ever do that with her.
Mm-hmm.
They had some kind of a connection with one another that he didn't really have with like other women. And so it's just that's one piece of, there's a lot of stuff in that episode, but that's one thing I just remember is just a really good scene of them at the bar together. But I didn't include it because it's kind of a depressing, Mad Men generally is kind of, there's a lot of depression stuff. And I wanted to sort of, I mean, I brought up the MASH thing, but generally speaking, I thought the stuff I brought up was less depressing and at least more funny or more
I think
interesting.
that most Christmas episodes probably at least start out depressing and then have a happy ending at the end.
Right.
So it's kind of, I don't know, kind of hokey, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, as far as Malcolm in the Middle goes, I didn't watch it like religiously or anything, but I think you may get some mileage out of it for Bryan Cranston
Yeah.
because like some of the other stuff we mentioned earlier, this was kind of the same way. How Malcolm was the title character, and as Malcolm got older, he was less and less involved. It really became the Bryan Cranston show the last few seasons, and he's another guy that is very, very funny, but is also a really good dramatic actor. So
Yeah.
hard to come by, but really, really talented guy, and you may get some appreciation out of that because I know you're a big Breaking Bad fan.
Oh yeah, again, Bryan Cranston is just sort of another example that proves Joss Whedon said this once about how, I think it was Joss Whedon. I could be misquoting. I'm pretty sure Joss Whedon was the one where I got the theory that I've espoused a few times, that a comedic actor can do drama, and usually that works pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I was just picking on that earlier, but I'm just saying, I just mean more in terms of capability. Like a comedic actor could, be in a drama and manage to do okay. Like you wouldn't really notice an issue. Whereas taking a dramatic actor, a traditionally dramatic actor, and like trying to get them to do funny material is harder.
Yeah.
There's a certain level of timing and delivery and other things that go with it. And dramatic act, if that's their background and they're not kind of, in that comedic frame of mind, they have a hard time doing that. And so Bryan Cranston, to me, even when you really think about it, like as much as Breaking Bad could be a really dark, violent, gritty show, there were still, even in like the final season when things were at their worst, there were still times of like goofy Bryan Cranston running from like place to place, trying to like sneak into the house or out of the house or climb over things, and like it's just or heck, he's still wearing the damn tighty whities, like walking around. Like there were still funny elements that like I think only Bryan Cranston could really bring those things forward, whereas like a traditionally dramatic actor might have just purely played the drama and the intensity and the violence, whereas Cranston could do it all. I think that's why Bob Odenkirk has been so good as Saul Goodman, both in Breaking Bad and as Jamie McGill in his show, where he too comes from a more of a comedy background, but as he needs to do some of the darker or more like morally ambiguous stuff, I just don't know if someone who didn't have the comedy background could pull it off.
I feel like it's almost a natural talent too, for just being a genuinely funny person, versus trying to act like you're a funny person, But people that know Bryan Cranston for like his recent work and like Breaking Bad, like I think of Bryan Cranston, I think of like Tim Watley on Seinfeld and Malcolm in the Middle first. He's like, in my mind, he is a comedic actor that does drama. And I'm sure a lot of people that only know him for his newer stuff may not even, that doesn't even come into their mind that he's a comedic actor.
Yeah.
But
it's true, because at this point Seinfeld is so far in the past, and even though Seinfeld is, people know it and it's a popular show, and what's funny is like you can meet people. I mean, think about it. It's 2018. Seinfeld went off the air in 98. Or was it 99?
I believe it was 98.
98. So there are people alive right now that could be 20 years old who have never seen an episode of Seinfeld.
Sure.
Like that's possible. They might have heard of it, but they've never seen it. But they might have seen Breaking Bad,
Right.
It's a thought that makes me feel a lot older than I want to, but
yeah, it really, makes you feel old.
In the chat here, before we close things down, in the chat, Jerp Pen was asking Jay, what is your favorite season of The Office? I listed my answer, season 3, which I'm on the record about.
Since you said 3, I think I will go with 2, because I think 2 is where the show really hit its stride and found out what it was what it wanted to be.
Yeah.
Season 1, I think, is a good season too, but it's kind of like it doesn't quite know what it's going to be. But you get into season 2, and it's like that's when the Prison Mike comes out, and
Nope. Prison Mike is season 3.
Is it 3? Okay,
Yeah.
well, he starts to do some of his characters, and I think the basketball game is in season 2. Am I right about that?
Nope, that's season 1.
Oh crap! Well, anyway, I like season 2 a lot.
Season 2 is like the booze cruise, is the where he cooks his foot on the Foreman grill. That's the episode with the conflict resolution, where it's like Michael finds out Toby's like keeping all these like conflict records, and he kind of like goes through all the files of like everybody's little interpersonal conflicts, and then so they go through like a laundry list of all the things that Jim has done to Dwight.
See, that's my problem with in my rewatching of the show has been on Netflix, so it's just like you don't really think this is season whatever. It's just going,
Yeah.
unless you consciously acknowledge this is season 2 or 3, whatever.
Right. I think, well, I mean, and yeah, like after season 1, it almost feels to me like The Office went through a very, very minor, like slight, like retooling.
Yeah.
Because even when you look at it, season 1 looks a little bit washed out.
It does.
Like they really were going for that documentary vibe. Season 2 just looks brighter. They made Mike Steve Carell lost a bunch of weight. They changed his hair. He's like less threatening.
His hair was slicked back in the beginning, right?
Yeah, and like he looked very like, and he looked kind of like sweaty all the time. Yeah. Like there was like an intensity they were putting, into his character that it's not like Michael was Michael, and he never really played him all that differently, but they definitely sort of softened his edges just a tiny bit. Not so much to neuter the character, but they definitely, again, you can just, if you watch like the last episode of season 1 and then you watch the first episode of season 2,
sure,
the change in the color, the way that, again, just the way it's being filmed is obvious. Like it's very clear there's a difference. But even just in the way that the comedy is just ever so slightly less awkward. It's like they figured out their timing a little better. They figured out, like you say, they grew into what they were going to be.
That may be some of the departure from the UK office. Some of the where they started doing their own thing, even more so.
Yeah. Season 1 very much seems to draw upon the UK office, whereas season 2, it really starts to be. I mean, again, the pilot of the US office is basically the pilot of the UK office. I mean, it literally is almost like shot for shot, dialogue for dialogue, the same. I think there's slight alterations. The other episodes are different, of course, like from the first season. It's not like they just aped the entire first season, but and then other than like broad stories, like because in the UK office, like the branch closing was something that was going to happen, or like they were talking about as being a possibility. Obviously, the US office kind of kept that as an ongoing story, like we were talking about earlier. But yeah, no, and again, it's tough. Like for me, the answer is just unequivocally season 3, just because I just think that in addition to them finding themselves, you now have the addition of like Ed Helms. And I think Steve Carell just seemed to be like ever so more secure and comfortable in the character. Like he knew what he was doing. The cast seems more comfortable with each other. It just everything works. But I don't begrudge you season 2, and it's very, in my mind, it's very close. Season 2 is hilarious. It's very funny. Lots of good stuff there. And kind of like I was saying too, like even season 2, from the beginning of the season to the end of the season, there's been a very clear evolution in the characters. There was an ongoing story told. And so even though you can probably watch any episode of The Office, The Office isn't exactly serialized, but you could watch the first episode of season 2 and then the last episode of season 2, and it's like the characters are in very different places. Like the characters have evolved, the stories evolved. There's lots of good stuff going on. So you've got good instincts.
Yeah, and I think that maybe in season 2 when Ryan grows a goatee briefly, and then Steve Carell grows one as well.
That is season 5.
Damn, I'm way off, man.
Yeah, because that's when Ryan comes back. Michael hired him, and then Michael's like trying to he's trying to have a goatee when Ryan does, but then Ryan shaves it. And then you see that because Michael did it, then Dwight did it, and like Dwight has like this really scraggly looking, goatee. Yeah. So this is gonna go down as like the Christmas / Office episode, I think, of Plateau TV, because I think we talked about that as much as we talked about anything else.
we always
we kept it for last because there's a lot of material to mine.
We always wind up talking about The Office a lot.
Yeah. It's the equivalent of Friday the 13th for our show, which I don't think until just now, I don't think we mentioned. So
somehow I managed to not mention it today.
Yeah. In any case, Jay, I think so. That covers my list. I think we covered your stuff. Any final thoughts before we sign off?
I'm good, man. I hope everybody has a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays, Happy New Year. Hope to do more of these shows at some point in the future, whenever your schedule permits. And yeah, it's been fun.
Yes, sir. I would also note too something else we've been toying with, and we have to figure out logistically how to do it. I've been talking to you offline about that Scener thing. So for those of you who don't know, Scener is this app you can install in your browser, your Chrome browser specifically, that allows you to watch and provide commentary to a TV show or movie on, I think they have Netflix, Hulu, and YouTube. There is also a new beta version that allows people who are not in the same place, and Jay and I are very far apart geographically, but that allows people in such circumstances to watch something together. It looks like it's only with Netflix right now. It's just a beta. Jay and I need to figure out how to do it. I know that the beta came out. I signed up for it. I got to figure it out, but we'll have to figure that out and try and do something. Since it's just Netflix, it somewhat limits our options. I mean, hell, let's pick a good episode of The Office and just enjoy it and see where that takes us.
There's plenty of content on all of those formats. So I mean, we probably wouldn't have a problem picking something.
I think the way that what I really wish is if they could get Hulu onto that and we could do the live watch of Lost together. That's what I would want to do.
That would be cool.
To me, that's the pinnacle. That's where we want to get to. But we'll see. In any case, it is almost tomorrow's Christmas Eve. So I'm sure everybody's deep in their holiday planning and celebrations and things. So Jay, thanks for making the time today.
Absolutely.
Awesome getting to spend some time with you talking about this stuff. And for the 3 of you, at times 2, at times 4 of you who are watching live with us, thank you so much. We really do appreciate it. Share the channel, let people know that every now and again we make videos that are interesting. every 7 months or so a new video comes out. We're on the same I won't make the same Sherlock joke. I'll regulate myself. But in any case, have a good night, Jay. Merry Christmas, happy holidays to all of you, the same. Yeah, please get through it. Have a safe new year, and hopefully we'll be seeing more of you then.
Absolutely.
All right. Good night.
All right. Good night.